Knowing who you are. Knowing who you are. Being able to answer this question, who am I? And what do I want? You know, many times when I go out of the country, I am baffled by that question. To explain what is your occupation, I've stood there for 10 minutes. Well, am I a talk show host? Well, I'm more than a talk show host. Am I a businesswoman? I'm a businesswoman. I'm more than a businesswoman. Am I an entrepreneur? I'm more than an entrepreneur. So I just leave it blank or self-employed. So I'm not asking for the roles that you play as daughters. I'm not asking that question. What are the roles that you play as a daughter, as a friend, as a sister? You're going to be a lawyer. You're going to teach. You're going to be a pharmacist. I'm asking the bigger question of who am I? Who am I really? My answer is I am God's child. I am that which is born of all that is. I am, as Pierre de Chardin said, a spiritual being having a human experience. Come trailing the breath of the ancestors yet, but trailing the breath of the angels. And understanding that because I am connected to the source of all that is possible for me. That's who I am. And what do I want? I don't want to just be successful in the world. I don't want to just make a mark or have a legacy. The answer to that question for me is I want to fulfill the highest, truest expression of myself as a human being. I want to fulfill the promise that the Creator dreamed when He dreamed the cells that made up me. What do I want? You must have some kind of vision for your life. Even if you don't know the plan, you have to have a direction in which you choose to go. I never was the kind of woman who liked to get in a car and just go for a ride. I had a boyfriend who would say, let's just go for a ride. I want to know, where are we going? Do we have a destination? Is there a plan? Or are we just riding? What I've learned is that's a great metaphor for life. You want to be in the driver's seat of your own life, because if you're not, life will drive you. Knowing who you really are in this space and time that we embody. That's number one. What do you want? Who are you? Number two, you must find a way to serve. Martin Luther King said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. Now, we live in a world where everybody wants to be famous and where we admire people for just being famous. We think being known brings us value. The truth is, all of that will fade in time. The real truth is that service and significance, service and the significance that you bring to your service is that which is lasting. So to be able to, whatever your occupation or job or talent or gift is, our honorees today getting doctorate degrees, two apparently opposite fields, HIV and AIDS and the spoken word. But what they have in common is service, using the spoken word in service to community and the world. Using your knowledge and information about HIV and AIDS and medicine in service to the world. And if you look at all the most successful people in the world, whether they know it or not, they have that paradigm of service. Everybody's talking about Mark Zuckerberg and IPO. Service. Jay-Z rapping. Service. Through the word, to people, through song. For many years, I was really just happy to be on TV, and people would stop and say, "Oh, you on TV?" "Yeah, I'm on TV. I like being on TV. It's a nice job." That I went back and I took a long look at what it was I was doing on TV and made a decision that I was no longer going to just be on TV, but I was going to use TV as a platform, as a force for good, and not be used by TV. And I will tell you, my decision to make that significant change in the way I operated on television, using television as a service, changed my career exponentially. Service through medicine, service through art, using whatever it is you produce, your product, as a way of giving back to the world. When you shift the paradigm of whatever it is you choose to do to service, and you bring significance to that, success will, I promise you, follow you. Service and significance equals success. That's number 2. Number 3, it's so simple, but so hard to do. Always do the right thing. Be excellent. People notice. Think of how you notice. You go to Taco Bell, somebody gives you an extra napkin and some sauce. You notice. You want to go back to that person, because even at Taco Bell, excellence shows itself. Be excellent. Let excellence be your brand. Everybody talks about building a brand. I never even knew what that was. When people say, "You're a brand," I would say, "No, I'm just Oprah." What I recognize now is that my choice to, in every way, in every example, in every experience, to do the right thing and the excellent thing is what has created the brand. And what I know is that when you are excellent, you become unforgettable. People remember you. You stand out. Regardless of what it is, you become an unforgettable woman. And that is what we all want. We want to be unforgettable and not forgettable. So doing the right thing, even when nobody knows you're doing the right thing, will always bring the right thing to you. I promise you that. Why? Because the third law of motion is always at work. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That is so true in all of our lives. That's what Newton said. Celia in The Color Purple said it. Everything you even try to do to me, already done to you. Everything you even try to do to me, already done to you. So you don't have to worry about revenge or getting back at somebody, making sure they pay. You just have to do the right thing, and the right thing will follow you even when people don't support it. I remember many times on my show. There are many shows y'all never saw. And the reason you didn't see them is because I got the last vote. And I remember 2010, my team, hardest working team in television, had done this interview with a woman who turns out she was a Sunday school teacher by day and a sex addict at night. Ooh. And they were like, "You won't believe it. We got her going out. We got her with the men, and we get to show her." And she was willing to show us everything. I sat down with a woman for an interview that was taped. And during the process of the interview, I said, why are you doing this? And she said, oh, I want to help people. I want to tell my story and I want to help people. I said, do you have children? She says, yes, I have a 10-year-old son. I knew right then this is never going to see the light of day. So we got off the air and I said to the lady, we are not going to air that show. And she said, why? My producer said, why? She knew she was being filmed. She knew what she was saying. She knows what you... I said, because her son will never get over it. Her son will never get over it. And it's not worth a rating point to me. Not worth a rating point to me to know that there's a 10-year-old boy who's destroyed because his mother went on the Oprah Winfrey Show and told all her business. You do the right thing even when other people think it may not be. And oftentimes when you make a decision to do the right thing, immediately you're faced with doubt. Was that the right thing? Was that the right decision? I don't know. Was that the right thing? You always know it's the right thing when in the end, there is peace. You are rewarded by peace in knowing that you did the right thing. The most important thing I have come to know in doing the right thing and making the right choices is understanding what we talked about yesterday. All of you leaving here have the potential for enormous success. There's a price that comes with that. People don't always like you, and they're not always happy for you. And if you surround yourself with people who are not accustomed to your success, they become fearful. They become scared because you are reflecting back something to them that they don't recognize. Now, they're not going to say, you know, I'm very fearful, because you're reflecting back to me something I don't recognize. They're going to say, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, who she thinks she is. Who she thinks she is. That only happens when you are around people who do not mean and want and aspire to the best for you. People who want the best for you want you to be your best. So my greatest advice to you is to surround yourself with people who are going to fill your cup until your cup runneth over. So when people say you're so full of yourself, you can say, yeah. Yes, I'm full. I'm so full, my cup runneth over. And to know that once your cup runneth over, you cannot spend your life with your gallon-size offerings, offering them to pint-sized people. You have got to surround yourself with gallon-sized people who can hang in the same company with you, so that you're not offering your gallons to those little pints out there who can't hold it anyway. Choice to Change the World. I love that song. I love hearing you all sing that song. And what I know for sure is that the biggest choices begin and end with you, your internal big questions. Who do I want to be in the world? My relationship to source energy, to all that is God. I'm not talking about what you believe in God. I'm talking about your experience of that which is all life, which is divine and universal. I'm talking about the big deal. Being connected and aligned with that. When you are tuned in and charged into that, whenever you feel empty, you go inside yourself and you connect to the source, and you know that all things are possible. To know that and to choose to do the right thing in service and significance, I promise you, you will create a vessel of service for yourself first, because you have to honor yourself first. You have to give to yourself first, otherwise you have nothing to give away. You will create a vessel for yourself, for your family, your community, and the world. And those three things will not only lead you to a blessed life. I stand as a witness. My life is so blessed, I can't even take it in sometimes. It will lead you not just to a gifted life and a rewarding life that fills you up, but a sweet life. That's what you want. You want the sweetness. You want it to be so sweet, so that even when the storms come, and they will, you'll know this too shall pass. The storm is passing over, and you shall not be moved, because you know who you are. When you can do that, grace will follow you, grace and glory. And when they see you coming, it ought to make them proud. I have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours talking to spiritual leaders and teachers, and not just spiritual leaders and teachers who have been deemed so, but thousands of people who came from levels of dysfunction, who came from levels of pain, who were suffering, who were challenged in their progression of trying to be the best human beings they could be. And they allowed themselves the opportunity to come on our show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, and share their stories. I am one who believes in the sharing of stories. I believe in the process of sharing, period, because I know that all life gets better when you share it. And those thousands of people who have been guests on the show, and many of them who are also audience members, have been my greatest teachers. And I would say that one of my gifts that I've had since I was a little girl growing up in Mississippi, being raised on a tiny little acre farm with my grandmother, is that I knew how to pay attention. I was a great observer of life. And I grew up believing that I was indeed, for sure, God's child. It's because every Sunday I sat in our little church down the road, a dirt road from where my grandmother lived. No running water, no electricity, but the church is down the road from us. And we could hear the singing as I was getting dressed for Sunday school. And I'd always sit on the left-hand side, the left pew in the second row. And I would listen to the preacher preach about the Lord thy God is a loving God, and sometimes he would say the Lord thy God is a jealous God. But most important, I heard him say, you are God's child, and through God all things are possible. And I literally took him at his word, so that by the time I was had to leave my grandmother because she became ill, and I was sent to live in Milwaukee with my mother, who had two other children, I got beat up on the playground, because when people would ask me, who's your daddy? I would say, Jesus is my daddy. Sometimes he's my brother. And God is my father. But what I now know and have learned, that my view of God, although I call that God in a box and all that, although that has, my vision of God has expanded to be inclusive of all things, all. God is all, God is law, God is all, in all things. Not just the guy sitting up with the beard. And now that view of God has expanded, I still understand how important it was for a little colored girl. We weren't even black yet, not to mention African American. You know what I mean, Harry? A little colored girl in Mississippi for whom there was no vision of hope or possibility. My grandmother's greatest desire for me, as she had been a maid and her mother before her had been a maid, her greatest desire was that I would grow up one day and be able to do the same. And she wished for me that I would be able to, she used to say, I hope you get some good white folks when you grow up. I hope you get good white folks who treat you good. So my grandmother would have no idea of the life that I now lead with good white folks who are working for me. She just wouldn't get it. She wouldn't get it. She wouldn't get it, but somehow I think she must know, and she's up around in the spirit realm saying, Lord have mercy, I didn't see it. But I now know that having that belief system, that something greater than me was in charge of my destiny, of my fate, that it wasn't just me alone having to survive for myself, is the thing, is the value, is the rock that has sustained me. So my vision, my perception, my understanding of what it means to be a universal citizen has grown as I came to understand Acts 17:28, my favorite Bible verse that says, in God I move and breathe and have my being. So my every attempt in life has been, since I was a little girl, to be in that space that I call God, to literally live in the breath that is God, to live in the breath and allow the breath to breathe me as God. And that is the reason I see I have been able to manage fame, handle the success, grow in grace, grow in the wisdom and glory that is offered by that space that I know to be God. Because in God, I live and breathe, I move and breathe, and I have my being. And everything that I do and all that I am comes up and out from the center of that space, even when I didn't know what to call it. So I have paid attention to my life because I understand that my life, just like your life, is always speaking to you, where you are, in the language, with the people, with the circumstances and experiences that you can understand and interpret if you are willing to see that always life, God, is speaking to you. Now, it took me a while to actually really get this and to understand it, but once I did, I started paying attention to everything. And one of the reasons why I can now accept the fact that I can offer my gatherings of information and wisdom and call myself a spiritual teacher is that every single person who ever came on my show, and I hear there's like 37,000 guests I've talked to, a lot of them came from dysfunction and a lot of them wouldn't appear to be teachers, but every one of them had something to say that was meaningful and valuable and that I could use to grow myself into the best of myself, which is what all of our jobs are. Your number one job is to become more of yourself and to grow yourself into the best of yourself. One of my greatest teachers was a man named John Diaz. We were doing a show called Would You Survive? And on Tuesday, October 31st in 2000, Singapore Airlines Flight 006, a Boeing 747 from Taipei to Los Angeles, took off with 179 souls aboard. 4 crew and 79 passengers perished in that flight, a total of 83 fatalities. There was a typhoon rolling through at the time, and the plane went down the wrong runway. Now, what's interesting, John Diaz was on that plane and he had several indications, which I'll talk about later, whispers, that he shouldn't have gotten on the plane. But he did anyway. He got on the plane and he managed to be one of the survivors. And on the Oprah show, I was asking him, what do you think it was that you were one of the survivors? And I said, do you think it was your position on the plane? Because he was in first class and he was sitting on the right next to an exit door. And he said, yes, I think it might have been the position of the plane. And also my quick thinking, he says, and the fact that I didn't stop moving. So I said, you don't believe, you're not a religious man? You don't believe that there was some kind of divine intervention going on there? He goes, no, I'm not a religious person. I do not believe that it was anything divine. I don't believe that. I did see, he said, as I got knocked back into the plane, that it looked like Dante's Inferno, with people strapped into their seats and just burning. And it seemed a bit to me, as I turned and looked backwards, like there was a light coming out of the tops of their heads. I guess you could call it an aura was leaving their bodies, and some lights were brighter than others. It changed, he said, it changed me. It gave me a new kind of spirituality, in a sense, that I now believe somehow, I don't know how, but life continues on somehow through that light. And I thought, I'm not a religious man, but I thought the brightness and dimness of the auras were how one lives one's life, so to speak. So that's one of the major things that really has changed with me since then, he says. I want to live my life so my aura, when it leaves, is one of the brightest ones. That's one of those moments that happens and you know that it's bigger than a show about survivors. Because I always knew that when I am moved, at least a million other people might be too. Because if I can feel it, and there are 20 million people watching around the world, it means that somebody else also felt and heard the same thing. That's what connection is. So I thought a lot about that. And thought about it, obviously, in thinking about, in preparing to talk to you all today, about how does one lead a meaningful life? Because ultimately, isn't that what we all want? We want to lead a life so that however we transition, people can say, wow, that was a bright one. That was a bright light. First of all, I think that it comes from a deep sense of awareness about who you are and why you're here. It comes from being in touch with, on a regular basis, the appreciation and the holy gratitude that should fill each of our hearts on a regular basis, just knowing what a privilege it is to be here and to be human. Close your eyes for a moment, will you please? And breathe with me. Just close your eyes. And if you will, put your thumb to your middle finger and gather your other fingers around. And let's feel the vibration and pulse of your personal energy as you take 3 deep breaths with me. Inhale. And as you exhale, just feel the vibration, energy, blood pulsating through your body, through you. And another inhale. And another inhale. and keep your eyes closed. And let's just think about this day. This day that you have been graced to breathe in and out thousands of times. This day where many of those breaths were taken for granted. You just expected the next one to come. But the truth is, there's no guarantee that the next one comes. This day, how you started your day, what your thoughts were this morning, how you've carried yourself through this day, how you've been allowed to have encounters and experiences, some challenging, some more life-enhancing, that pushed you forward another day of being here on the planet Earth as a human being. Let's just think about that. After all you've been through, in this day alone, and the many days and years past, how you got here to this prestigious, esteemed university, the choices you made that have brought you to this day. Open your heart and quietly to yourself say the only prayer that's ever needed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're still here. And you get another chance this day to do better and be better. Another chance to become more of who you were created and what you were created to fulfill. Thank you. Amen. Open your eyes. That's how it starts. That is the foundation for meaning and purpose in your life, is to bring yourself back to your breath. Let failure be your friend. There are going to be times, of course, where you're going to win a lot. A lot of things are going to go your way. And it's wonderful to bask in that adulation and to feel proud of your successes. But there are also going to be times, the satisfaction that those moments bring, nothing can compare to that. Those victories will feed you for years to come and help you stay committed when your tank is sometimes empty. Winning is great. It's fantastic. I love it. I love being number one. I love winning. But it's the times when things go wrong, when you fall or fail, that you're actually going to learn the most about yourself. You know, all those years on the Oprah show, 25 years, we were the number one show for 25 years. And that's because I lived with the intention to serve the audience. The audience came first every show. I would sit with the producers and say, well, I can't do that because I can't find the truth of myself in that show. I have to have a thread of truth to be able to hold on to. So I knew so well the audience. I felt like I was the audience. The audience was me. And I felt so connected. And then I ended that and started a new network. And I flailed for a while. And I was really upset with myself. But I will tell you that when I was able to shift the paradigm to start to looking at wow, what I have instead of what I don't have, what I have instead of what I thought I'd lost, I was able to begin to turn things around. But it's those moments of being of uncertainty. It's the moments where, all of my mistakes show up on the evening news. You can make a mistake. I can tell if I've done something wrong. It's on the CNN crawl. I can read about it. But learning from the moments where things weren't going so great, being able to get still, to connect with that which I know is God, the force, the power greater than myself, and to come back and realize that in order to move forward, you move forward by taking the next right step. You don't have to know everything to do. You don't have to know all the steps to make. Just what is the next right move? It's a big, hard world out there, but you're ready for it. And you're ready because there is nothing more powerful than you using your personality to serve the calling of your soul. Every one of us has been called to the planet to use, and in this moment, in this political moment where everybody is just hysterical, in this moment, the call is for whatever side you choose to be on, to use more of you to bring forth the light. And to do that, you've got to have clarity about who you really are. There is no life without a spiritual life. There is no life without understanding what Pierre de Chardin, the philosopher and mystic, said. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So your real job as you go out to try to find one and have all of this anxiety and fear, and your real job is to know the truth and to create a spiritual practice that allows you to stay in it. To be clear, I'm not talking about your religion. I'm talking about whatever it is that nurtures the essence of you in such a way that you can do what you came here to do. And one of the reasons why I was able to be so successful all those years on the Oprah show is because I understood there was really no difference between me and the audience. I was a surrogate for the audience because I know that the audience and you and you and you want the same thing I do. We all want to be able to live out the truest expression, the fullest, purest expression of ourselves as human beings. That's what you want. And in order to do that, you've got to practice, you've got to develop that spiritual muscle that allows you to check in with yourself and not have to ask everybody else about a decision, but to have the clarity of your own knowing, the comfort of your own knowing. And to do that, you've got to live in the space of gratitude. That is my number one spiritual practice. I practice being grateful. And a lot of people say, oh, Oprah, that's easy for you because you got everything. I got everything because I practiced being grateful. I ran across this beautiful quote the other day. I can't even remember who it was from, that said, do not waste your time desiring what other people have. Remember, the things that you now have are things you once only hoped for. So I live in that space every day of practicing gratitude because I know that being grateful wherever you are, whatever place or space in your life, being grateful changes your personal vibration. I was just having a conversation with Sheryl Sandberg the other day about her book, Option B, and we all know she lost her beloved husband, David. And I said, how did you get through it? And she said, by practicing gratitude. I didn't believe it at first, but I started to write down 3 things every day that I was grateful for. I said, oh, I've been doing that for years. Because when you wake up in the morning looking at the world
for what you're going to write down or what you're going to state to yourself by the end of the day that you're grateful for, you have a different outlook on life. I'm just waiting on somebody to hold the door, see if that makes the list. Some days you only have, I'm still breathing, because life gets in the way sometimes. But practicing gratitude as a spiritual practice to evolve you, to bring you closer to the truth of knowing who you really are, is one of the most valuable things I have ever experienced. And I do it. I have journals and journals and journals and journals filled with 5 things a day. If you don't believe me, just for a moment, do this. Close your eyes, everybody in here. We're gonna do this for 5 seconds. You're gonna inhale, and on the exhale, just say, thank you. Inhale, exhale. Do it one more time. Let whatever you're most grateful for in your heart in this moment just rise to the surface. Deep breath. Thank you. Open your eyes. Don't you feel better? You feel better. Researchers have shown that if you can just for 17 seconds a day, bring yourself into the space of presence and gratitude, you literally change your vibration. If you can't give yourself 17 seconds, then you don't deserve a good life. You can't give yourself 17 seconds to breathe and say thank you, then just let whatever happens to you.
In 1964, I was a little girl sitting on the linoleum floor of my mother's house in Milwaukee, watching Anne Bancroft present the Oscar for Best Actor at the 36th Academy Awards. She opened the envelope and said 5 words that literally made history. The winner is Sidney Poitier. Up to the stage came the most elegant man I had ever seen. I remember his tie was white and of course his skin was black, and I'd never seen a black man being celebrated like that. And I have tried many times to explain what a moment like that means to a little girl, a kid watching from the cheap seats as my mom came through the door, bone tired from cleaning other people's houses. But all I can do is quote and say that the explanation in Sidney's performance in Lilies of the Field, amen, amen. What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have. And I'm especially proud and inspired by all the women who have felt strong enough and empowered enough to speak up and share their personal stories. Each of us in this room are celebrated because of the stories that we tell. But it's not just a story affecting the entertainment industry. It's one that transcends any culture, geography, race, religion, politics, or workplace. So I want tonight to express gratitude to all the women who have endured years of abuse and assault because they, like my mother, had children to feed and bills to pay and dreams to pursue. They're the women whose names we'll never know. They are domestic workers and farm workers. They are working in factories and they work in restaurants and they're in academia and engineering and medicine and science. They're part of the world of tech and politics and business. There are athletes in the Olympics and there are soldiers in the military. And there's someone else, Reese Taylor. A name I know and I think you should know too. In 1944, Reese Taylor was a young wife and a mother. She was just walking home from a church service she'd attended in Abbeville, Alabama, when she was abducted by 6 armed white men, raped and left blindfolded by the side of the road, coming home from church.
They threatened to kill her if she ever told anyone. But her story was reported to the NAACP, where a young worker by the name of Rosa Parks became the lead investigator on her case. And together they sought justice. But justice wasn't an option in the era of Jim Crow. The men who tried to destroy her were never persecuted. Recy Taylor died 10 days ago, just shy of her 98th birthday. She lived, as we all have lived, too many years in a culture broken by brutally powerful men. For too long, women have not been heard or believed if they dared to speak their truth to the power of those men. But their time is up. In my career, what I've always tried my best to do, whether on television or through film, is to say something about how men and women really behave, to say how we experience shame, how we love and how we rage, how we fail, how we retreat, persevere, and how we overcome. I've interviewed and portrayed people who've withstood some of the ugliest things life can throw at you. But the one quality all of them seem to share is an ability to maintain hope for a brighter morning, even during our darkest nights. So I want all the girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns,
my life is fueled by my being, and the being fuels the doing. So I come from a centered place. I come from a focused place. I come from compassion. It's just my nature. I come from a willingness to understand and to be understood. And I come from wanting to connect. I mean, the secret of that show for 25 years is that people could see themselves in me. All over the world, they could see themselves in me. And even as I became more and more financially successful, which was a big surprise to me, I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. But what I realized is through the whole process, because I'm grounded in my own self, that although I could have more shoes, my feet stayed on the ground, although I was wearing better shoes. These are kind of cute today, too. So I could keep my feet on the ground, even though I could get more shoes. And I could understand that it really was because I was grounded. I've done was doing and continue to this day to do the consciousness work. I work at staying awake. And being awakened is just another word for spirituality, but spirituality throws people off and they think you mean religion. When I was hiring people for my company for looking for presidents, when people would come in, I'd say, tell me, what is your spiritual practice? And literally would throw people, I'm not religious. Or I said, I didn't ask you about your religion. I asked you what's your spiritual practice. What do you do to take care of yourself? What do you do to keep yourself centered? What do you do and one woman started crying, that's not the person.
So that's a sign.
That's a sign. So to answer your question, everything is fueled that comes from me really wanting to be a better person on earth. And this is what I know to be true. The reason why the show worked is because I understood that audience, my viewers, the people who watched us every day and would come and just like you all did, get tickets, and they would come with their family. You all just came across campus, but that's good too. But people would come from all over the world just to be there with their aunts and their mothers, and they'd come with their cousins, and there'd be a few men in there going, what the hell? Or saying, well, I went to Oprah with you. I went to Oprah. And at least give me clear for 3 or 4 weeks. I went to Oprah with you. I had such regard for that. And I just had a conversation with John Mackey, who runs Whole Foods.
Yeah.
and has written this fabulous book. You should get it, called Conscious Capitalism. And he was talking about how the investment in the stakeholders, the people who you are serving, that connection between the people who you're trying to serve and sell to, is equally as important as the people who you're buying from, right. Equally as important as the people who are, supporting you financially, as your stockholders if you are, a public company. So I always understood that there really was no difference between me and the audience. At times I might have had better shoes, but at the core of what really matters, that we are the same. And you know how I know that? Because all of us are seeking the same thing. You're here at this fabulous school, and we'll go out into the world and each pursue based upon what you believe your talents are, what your skills are, maybe your gifts are, but you're seeking the same thing. Everybody wants to fulfill the highest, truest expression of yourself as a human being. That's what you're looking for. The highest, truest expression of yourself as a human being. And because I understand that if you're working in a bakery and that's where you want to be, and that may be what you've always wanted to do, is to bake pies for people or bake cakes for people or to offer your gift, then that's for you. And there's no difference between you and me, except that's your platform. Mm-hmm. That's your show every day. So my understanding of that has allowed me to reach everyone. And there's no way that you wouldn't, because that's what I truly feel. Nobody's journey is seamless or smooth. We all stumble. We all have setbacks. If things go wrong, you hit a dead end, as you will. It's just life's way of saying, time to change course. So ask every failure. This is what I do. Every failure, every crisis, every difficult time, I say, what is this here to teach me? And as soon as you get the lesson, you get to move on. If you really get the lesson, you pass and you don't have to repeat the class. If you don't get the lesson, it shows up wearing another pair of pants or skirt to give you some remedial work. And what I found is that difficulties come when you don't pay attention to life's whisper, because life always whispers to you first. And if you ignore the whisper, sooner or later, you'll get a scream. Whatever you resist persists, but if you ask the right question, not why is this happening, but what is this here to teach me? What is this here to teach me? It puts you in the place and space to get the lesson you need. My friend Eckhart Tolle, who's written this wonderful book called A New Earth, that's all about letting the awareness of who you are stimulate everything that you do. He puts it like this. He says, don't react against a bad situation, merge with that situation instead, and the solution will arise from the challenge. Because surrendering yourself doesn't mean giving up. It means acting with responsibility. Okay. Many of you know that, as President Hennessy said, I started this school in Africa. And I founded the school where I'm trying to give South African girls a shot at a future like yours. And I spent 5 years making sure that school would be as beautiful as the students. I wanted every girl to feel her worth reflected in her surroundings. So I checked every blueprint. I picked every pillow. I was looking at the grout in between the bricks. I knew every thread count of the sheets. I chose every girl from the villages, from 9 provinces, and yet last fall I was faced with a crisis I'd never anticipated. I was told that one of the dorm matrons was suspected of sexual abuse. Well, that was, as you can imagine, devastating news. First I cried, actually I sobbed for about a half an hour, and then I said, let's get to it. That's all you get, is a half an hour. You need to focus on the now, what you need to do now. So I contacted a child trauma specialist. I put together a team of investigators. I made sure the girls had counseling and support. And Gail and I got on a plane and flew to South Africa. And the whole time I kept asking that question, what is this here to teach me? And as difficult as that experience has been, I got a lot of lessons. I understand now the mistakes I made because I had been paying attention to all of the wrong things. I built that school from the outside in, when what really mattered was the inside out. So it's a lesson that applies to all of our lives as a whole. What matters most is what's inside. What matters most is the sense of integrity, of quality, and beauty. I got that lesson. And what I know is that the girls came away with something too. They've emerged from this more resilient and knowing that their voices have power.
Having compassion for other people is at the top of that list. I would say commitment is at the top of that list. And also a spirit of constructive engagement. And by compassion, I don't just mean sympathy. It certainly isn't pity. It's being present, and it's also feeling with other beings. You know, during the years of the Oprah show, I interviewed over 37,000 people one-on-one. But during all those years of talking to over 37,000 people one-on-one, I could feel what they were feeling so strongly. Sometimes it made me sick, literally. So I had to learn how to feel how others were feeling, feel with others, which is what it means to be compassionate, to feel with others without taking in all of their stuff. Being compassionate means I feel with you. It is one of the greatest qualities in the world to have if you're going to be majoring in what it takes to be a great human being. I feel with you means I not only am willing to walk in your shoes, it means my heart beats with yours. It means I see myself in you. It means I may not have shared that circumstance, but I know what heartbreak feels like. I know what pain feels like, and all pain is the same. It means I can feel your will to want to do better and be better. And I feel and I am with you. In spite of everything that's happened to you, I feel your need to rise. I want to help you rise. I want to rise with you. So many people are worried about building a brand. I hear kids on social media talking about their brand. And I used to really resent the word when people would say to me, oh, you have this brand, because I never even thought about a brand. I just thought about day in and day out, making the best right choice for me. But now I embrace it because I recognize people see me as a brand. But for me, it's not a business. It is a question of what do you stand for? And I will say this, you're nothing if you're not the truth. So I've made a living, I've made a life, I've made a fortune, really. It's fantastic. All good from being true to myself. And that's if I could leave you with any message today, that is it. The biggest reward is not financial benefits, though it's really good. You can get a lot of great shoes. But those of you who have a lot of shoes know that having great shoes and a closet full of shoes or cars or houses or square footage doesn't fill up your life. It doesn't. But living a life of substance can. Substance through your service, your offering of your whole self. And the baseline for how do you live a life of substance is whatever is the truth for you. What do you stand for? I think some people think that, are under the impression that I was born empowered, that I was born coming out of the womb, ready to interview a Klansman. Then cut to commercial. We'll be right back. But the truth is, I know very well what it's like to be marginalized, to be told either subtly or quite directly that my contribution isn't or wasn't welcome, that my face was invisible, and that my needs were an affront. So back when I was doing the news in Baltimore, I asked to be paid the same as my co-anchor, who did exactly the same job as I was doing. And I expected that I would be compensated. So I went in and I asked that I would get the same amount of money. So he was doing the same job I was doing, except that he called me babe all the time. Babe. Yeah, babe. Anyway, I was told by my news director and by the general manager, because first I went to the news director, then I went to general manager, and I was told that because I was a single woman who didn't have a mortgage and I didn't have kids, that I was not entitled to earn the same kind of money as the man who was sitting next to me doing the same thing. And I realized in that moment that my employers did not get it. They did not understand my value. But you know what? I did. So cut to AM Chicago. The team's hard at work, and they had been working for a long time. And after a year or so, we were asked to be syndicated. That work began to pay off. And before long, we were now no longer called AM Chicago. We're the National Oprah Winfrey Show. I got a raise, but my producers did not. So I went into the boss at the time, and I asked that my producers, who incidentally were all female, I asked that they would be given a pay raise increase. And my boss, this is in 1986, said, why? They're only girls. What do they need more money for? Girls. I've used the word affectionately, sometimes referring to women as girls, and there was no affection in his tone. It was absolutely condescending. So, you know, it takes a while to develop a voice, but once you have it, you damn sure better use it on stuff that matters. So I took a deep breath in that moment and said, either they're going to get raises or I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to work if they don't get paid more, babe. Now, I would like to believe that I could have spoken that kind of truth to misogyny, even if I'd been all by myself. But here I was on the brink of finally getting what I really wanted and had been working many years for, a national show. I mean, I might have been too intimidated to stand my own ground against this guy if I were actually alone. But here's the thing, you're never alone. You're never alone. The sovereign sound of Maya Angelou's voice was pushing me forward that day, whispering, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. So when I was faced with the opportunity to advocate for my producers, I silently called on some of the 10,000 and walked into my boss's office, hand in spirit, with the women who had come before me. I could feel Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and Pearl Bailey and Sarah Vaughan and Lena Horne clutching their green books looking for a place to eat while they sang in supper clubs for whites only. And I could feel Reese Taylor and Rosa Parks refusing to relinquish their dignity in the face of death threats. All these women were with me that day, walking into the office in Chicago, as was Diana Carroll and Petula Clark and Joan Baez and Mary Tyler Moore and Moms Mabley and Barbara Walters and all of the astonishing women whose names none of us will ever even know, despite their sacrifice. And I'm pretty sure I even heard Shirley Chisholm urging me on with this thought. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I understood that there were so many times that many women from my mother's generation, and God knows my grandmother's generation, who were forced to grit their teeth and just take it because standing up for themselves wasn't even an option. The risk was too great, and they knew it. But they also knew in their bones what my dear friend Maya put so eloquently into words when she says, you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Because these women and so many others like them made the decision not to allow themselves to be reduced by the many injustices they were subjected to, I found the strength to act, if not just for myself, not just for my producers, but for all the women who in their
ingenious ways, subverted the rules, laid the foundation, and pushed the envelope just a little bit further for me. You must find a way to serve. Martin Luther King said that not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service. Now, we live in a world where everybody wants to be famous and where we admire people for just being famous. We think being known brings us value. The truth is, all of that will fade in time. The real truth is that service and significance, service and the significance that you bring to your service is that which is lasting. So to be able to, whatever your occupation or job or talent or gift is, our honorees today getting doctorate degrees, to apparently opposite fields, HIV and AIDS and the spoken word. But what they have in common is service, using the spoken word in service to community and the world. Using your knowledge and information about HIV and AIDS and medicine in service to the world. And if you look at all the most successful people in the world, whether they know it or not, they have that paradigm of service. Everybody's talking about Mark Zuckerberg and IPO. Service. Jay-Z rapping. Service. Through the word, to people, through song. For many years, I was really just happy to be on TV, and people would stop and say, "Oh, you on TV?" Yeah, I'm on TV. I like being on TV. It's a nice job. That I went back and I took a long look at what it was I was doing on TV and made a decision that I was no longer going to just be on TV, but I was going to use TV as a platform, as a force for good, and not be used by TV. And I will tell you, my decision to make that significant change in the way I operated on television, using television as a service, changed my career exponentially. Service through medicine, service through art, using whatever it is you produce, your product, as a way of giving back to the world. When you shift the paradigm of whatever it is you choose to do to service and you bring significance to that, success will, I promise you, follow you. Service and significance equals success.
You see, I believe that life is really very simple. What we give out, we get back. And what we believe about ourselves becomes true for us. Our thinking creates our experiences. There is a law of thinking like everything else, like all of nature. There is a universal energy or law of mind or subconscious mind, whatever you want to call it. But to me it means the power that is within me and around me transforms my thoughts into experiences. You see, I believe that we are all responsible for everything in our lives. Every thought we think and every word we speak is creating our experiences, our future. And it's almost as though every time you think a thought or you speak a word, that universal intelligence or energy is listening or responding to what you are thinking or believing or saying, without judgment or criticism, totally accepting us at our own value. Whatever we choose to believe becomes true for us.
I have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours talking to spiritual leaders and teachers, and not just spiritual leaders and teachers who have been deemed so, but thousands of people who came from levels of dysfunction, who came from levels of pain,
who were suffering, who were challenged in their progression of trying to be the best human beings they could be. And they allowed themselves the opportunity to come on our show, The Oprah Winfrey Show, and share their stories. I am one who believes in the sharing of stories. I believe in the process of sharing, period, because I know that all life gets better when you share it. And those thousands of people who have been guests on the show, and many of them who are also audience members, have been my greatest teachers. And I would say that one of my gifts that I've had since I was a little girl growing up in Mississippi, being raised on a tiny little acre farm with my grandmother, is that I knew how to pay attention. I was a great observer of life. And I grew up believing that I was indeed for sure God's child. It's because every Sunday I sat in our little church down the road, a dirt road from where my grandmother lived. No running water, no electricity, but the church is down the road from us. And we could hear the singing as I was getting dressed for Sunday school. And I'd always sit on the left-hand side, the left pew in the second row. And I would listen to the preacher preach about the Lord thy God is a loving God, and sometimes he would say the Lord thy God is a jealous God. But most important, I heard him say, you are God's child, and through God, all things are possible. And I literally took him at his word, so that by the time I was had to leave my grandmother because she became ill, and I was sent to live in Milwaukee with my mother, who had 2 other children, I got beat up on the playground because when people would ask me, who is your daddy? I would say, Jesus is my daddy. Sometimes he's my brother. And God is my father. But what I now know and have learned, that my view of God, although I call that God in a box and all that, although that my vision of God has expanded to be inclusive of all things, all. God is all, God is law, God is all, in all things. Not just the guy sitting up with the beard.
If you think for a moment about the vastness of the universe, it is so incredibly big that our human minds cannot comprehend it. It is enormous. And even our top scientists with the most up-to-date equipment today cannot measure the size of the universe. And half of them don't agree on whether it's expanding or contracting. And in this incredible universe, there are so many galaxies that we haven't counted all of them. And in one of the smaller galaxies, in a far-off corner, there is the small galaxy called the Milky Way. In a very far-off corner, there is a minor sun. And around this sun revolve a few pinpoints, one of which is called planet Earth. Now, I find it very, very hard to believe that the incredible intelligence that created this entire universe is an old man sitting on a cloud above the planet Earth watching my genitals with a book. And yet it doesn't compute. It does not compute. And yet how many of us were raised to believe that? And many of us are living it. If you were raised in a religion where you were a sinner and a worm and you had a lot of sexual problems and things like that, start to reevaluate. Do some mental work to change that so that you're not still operating. You can sit down and in front of a mirror, it would be real good, look in your eyes and say, okay, now when I was a kid, this is what I was taught. But I'm not a child anymore. Now I am adult and I don't believe that. I now choose to believe and then decide what you want your belief of God to be like. You see, if you're in a religion that puts you down, or where you are a sinner or a worm or whatever, get another religion. There are plenty of them. They all tell you that they're the only way. I think even our concept of God must support us. And you do not have to have the same concept of God that your parents had or your grandparents had. You don't have to. Each person is a unique individual, and each one of us creates our own lifestyle and our own belief system. And I think we need to constantly reevaluate what we believe. And particularly if we believe things that don't nourish us. Think, why do I believe that? Where did I learn that? Is that really true for me now? Does it make sense? Maybe I could let that one go. You might create a pair of psychic scissors and cut them out of your consciousness. Or create a great big wastebasket and say, okay, that one goes there. And decide that you just do not choose to live under old limitations anymore. Refuse to believe in worry. Begin to trust the universe and watch how it works.
When life calls us, that's when we have to answer. People say, how did you do everything that you did? Well, I answered the telephone and opened the mail and did what was in front of me. And then life would give me something else to do and something else to do. And it's interesting because it's now been, I think, 25 years since I wrote the second book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in that period of time, that book alone has sold 40 million copies worldwide. And I've always felt that I didn't do anything to promote it at all. It's just life took over, and life said, this book is going to go to this country, and this book is going to go to this country, and go to this country. And it's gone many, many places all over the world. I even have 2 Chinese versions. There's the Chinese version of traditional China, and then there's the Chinese version of the Taiwan, which is the new China. You never know where life is going to take your work. And I think that it's important that you don't go into it to say, how much money can I make? Oh, I'm going to be rich. I've got to do this. Because books don't make you that rich. But what they do is open the world to you. And my thought has always been, how can I help the people? How can I help the people? And I think if you come from that point of view, it becomes a lot easier.
It's time to understand all the problems of individual nature are generated from within. And we don't have to solve problems that we create. We just have to dissolve. Problems that you create, you don't have to solve. If there is a problem in the situation, yes, we have to solve. But you have a problem within you, solution is not what you need, solution is madness. Solution means, for an illusion, you're creating an illusory solution. Something that you make up. For that, you create one more solution that you made up once again. No. You just have to turn off the problems. You're going through a certain drama, only thing is you're a lousy director. That's all there is. Instead of improving your direction, now you're trying to find a solution for a situation in a drama. It's like people watch a cinema and come home and they have big arguments about what happened there. So, the thoughts and emotions that you create, you don't have to find any solution for it. If you just turn it off, it's gone. If you find solution, you moving towards insanity. Because you create a ghost and you create a ghostbuster. The ghosts that you create, you must learn to play with them. I'm saying if nobody willing to play with you, you have to play with somebody, right? So the ghosts you create, if you like them, you play with them. If you don't like them, turn them off. But Sadhguru, they keep coming. You don't play. Don't like to play with them, don't play. They come and go. Never it ever happened that one thought remained for more than a moment, isn't it? It comes and goes, comes and goes. Let it come and go. If you try to find a solution for that, you will head towards insanity. One thing that you must do to yourself is, you are absolutely truthful to yourself. If you're also truthful to everybody around you, you will get other kinds of benefits with people. But I will not go that far right now. With yourself, you are 100% truthful. Otherwise, all kinds of tricks keep happening. To be truthful to yourself is not an easy thing, because there is lifetimes of habit of simply bullshitting yourself. A guest came to Shankaran Pillai's house. And being a South Indian man, down south, Pillais come from further down south. He was carrying an umbrella, which is a common thing. In Kerala and southern Tamil Nadu, to carry an umbrella is a very common thing because rains can be very heavy. Then they walked out, he took the guest out, then it started raining. But Shankaran Pillai did not open the umbrella. The guest said, "Why don't you open the umbrella?" Shankaran Pillai said, "I'm sorry, the umbrella is full of holes." Then the guest asked, "Why did you bring it?" "Well, I never thought it'll rain today." A whole lot of people are like this. They think somebody else has to catch their lice. This will take a long time because someone else catching your lice will take lifetimes. You must catch them. You should not let your chickens pass. To become 100% straight with yourself, it'll take a certain amount of application. But if this one thing you do, this piece of life will work for sure, 100%. Then figuring out a few things is very simple. For that I am there. If you just fix this one thing, that you're 100% straight, no any kind of deception. When there's a hole in the umbrella, you know there is a hole in the umbrella. You will never forget that there is a hole in the umbrella, okay? If you are like this, rest of the work becomes very simple and easy. Perception happens to you in 5 different dimensions. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, this is how you're perceiving life. This data has gathered within you. Only because this data has gathered within you, now you're able to walk on a round planet which spins. It's not a small thing. It is not a small thing that you're able to walk on a spinning round ball. Because all this data has gathered through 5 senses, it is not intellectual information, but it is a perceptual information. If this information is not there, you won't be able to walk actually. You will not be able to walk straight. This is what is happening for people when some people lose their memory and things like that. Suddenly they become unstable in their body because some of the data is gotten disconnected with their system. So, this data that you perceive is most important. That's what a child is all the time drinking up everything. You see how the child is looking at everything? Because he wants to drink up as much data as possible, because instinctively he knows without that data, he will not be able to function. So how attentive you are, how attentive your eyes are, how attentive your ears, nose, tongue and touch is, accordingly you have that much, usable information. So why one person is more efficient? Well, you are an athlete. Why one person is able to catch a damn ball, another person can't catch the damn thing? Why is it? Because that level of attention of exactly how that ball will behave, how you can anticipate where it will go, this is not there. Intellectually, suppose you have a PhD in football, you think you can play football?
If you have a PhD, I think you need to experience it as well. If you just study it only, yeah.
No, that is not experience, it's perception. You're watching it out of your keen interest, you're watching exactly how a ball moves. You may not be thinking the physics of it, but you're watching it and perceiving it. Because of that perception, you know something that you cannot know by reading 100 books about it. First of all, people are assuming that anger is happening to them or misery is happening to them. No, this is exactly what I said earlier, maybe I didn't articulate it fully. No, you are creating anger, you're creating misery, you're creating joy, you're creating whatever. All this is happening from within you. But human experience is happening from within us, isn't it?
Right.
Whether it's love or hate or anger or misery or joy or anything is only happening from within us.
Right.
The simple question I am asking is, what happens from within you? Should it happen your way or somebody else's way?
It should happen your way.
Of course, because the world will never happen your way 100%. Because there are so many stakeholders in the world, little bit will happen my way, little bit your way, that is fine. But what happens within me must happen my way. If what happens within me does not happen my way, this is the worst form of slavery, isn't it?
Wow.
Somebody decides what happens within me, somebody decides where I should sit. This is slavery, everybody understands this. Now somebody decides whether I am happy or unhappy. Isn't this the worst form of slavery?
Yeah.
So this is the liberation that humanity needs to work at. This is what inner engineering means. Inner engineering is not some mechanical process, because engineering means this essentially. You will say something is well engineered only if it works the way you want, isn't it? If this one doesn't work the way you want, what the hell are you expecting other things to work the way you want? It's just an accident. When you live accidentally, anxiety is normal.
We have to be ready to do it ourselves. Remember, each person has come to this planet to learn a lesson. You have your lessons, you have your lessons, I have my lessons, you have your lessons. They're all different. We cannot learn the other person's lessons. We are not here to change other people. We are here to change ourselves. That is what we've come to the planet for, to change ourselves. If we try to do it for someone else, or learn their lesson, or make it nice, they don't get to learn it. And even if we fix it, isn't it amazing how they turn around and recreate it again? And we all know people like that. We've paid their rent, or we've gotten them out of some mess, or we've done this for them or that for them. And 2 months later, they're in the same problem, because it's their pattern. It has nothing to do. Teaching them how to get out of it, it is much better if they're willing to learn. So it's like, the student must come to the teacher. And when the student is ready, the teacher is there, always.
I am the happiest of guys now, but it took me almost, 50 years to really get there. And the fact, let's go back, when I was in the 40s, that was like 1980s. And I was working on stem cells and teaching people what most people still believe, that the genes that we inherit really determine the character of our lives. And that becomes, when you think about it, it's like, well, did you pick the genes you came with? And we go, not that I know of. Can you change the genes if you don't like the characteristics? No. And then we tell you on top of that is, the genes turn on and off by themselves. So you could be walking down the street and the gene goes, time for cancer. It's like, what? And then I say, what were we teaching? What were we teaching to medical people as well as the public is that we were victims of heredity, that things were running in our family and then that would determine the character of our lives. And then the fear associated with that is, oh my God, like Angelina Jolie, for example, had a double mastectomy because the fear of breast cancer of her mother dying from it and her grandmother. Of course, that put into her mind that she would be a next victim of that. And then she has a double mastectomy to say, I will prevent this from happening. which is, well, that's not really true. But what was the point? It was the fear. And the fear of being a victim, meaning you're powerless. And I go, this is what people believe about their health. I am powerless. We got programmed when we were children to recognize when it comes to health, we don't take care of that. We go to the specialist, the doctor. I said, what is that learning period in our first 7 years? What does that do? It programs us. I said, yeah, but what's the program? And the program is, I'm not in charge of my health. That when it comes to health issues, I have to go see another person, and then their truth becomes my truth, because who am I? And I say, so what's the consequence? And I say, first thing, you just gave up power over your health. You say, I won't take care of my health. I'm going to let that professional, that's my program. And I go, well, there's a problem. And the problem is, as I was learning and then attributing my life to programs that I didn't know I had, because that was before I knew about the 7 years of programming, I looked at my life and it was like, okay, I was really good professionally. That's how I got to be the cell biologist, and the joy of working in that field of science. And that was really great. But the rest of my life was a shambles, It's like I couldn't get a relationship off the ground no matter what I tried. It was like, oh my God, I am doomed here. Why? Because I must have got the parenting genes and the from my father and my mother, and I'm not really good at it. And so I was working as life is just a mechanism. You do your thing, and then it's dust to dust. I had no spiritual foundation at all, because it was genes and proteins and chromosomes. That's and my dear Saviji knows exactly what I'm talking about, because she comes from a very serious science background, and that's why when we started collaborating and talking together, it was like, oh wow, we have this basic understanding of it. And the basic fact was this: okay, I'm a machine. That's what we were teaching. Go to the doctor. That's the repair person. Fix a machine. And what I learned through my research was that genes don't control life, and genes don't control themselves. And it's like, oh my God, I spent a whole career teaching this to medical doctors, that the genes control your life, and the fear that's pervasive out there is that I'm not in charge. And I'm working with what are called stem cells, and this is 50 years ago. And my research with stem cells revealed that genetically identical cells in different environments have different fate. What does that mean? It says, well, they all have the same genes, but the fate wasn't based on the genes. The fate was based on the environment. And all of a sudden, my research started to go off and say, wait, genes don't turn on and off. That's a complete false statement. Genes are blueprints. And I go, relevant, go into an architect's office where she's working on a blueprint, and lean over this architect's shoulder and ask her, hey, is your blueprint on or off? And she would look at me and she's like, well, it's a blueprint. There's no on and off. And I go, precisely. A gene is a blueprint to make a protein. It doesn't know on and off. It has no control by itself. It's not self-emergent, meaning it doesn't control us. It turns out that our perceptions and the environment we live in, and our perceptions of the environment, control our genetics. And I go, so why is that relevant? I say, I can change my perceptions. And all of a sudden it says, I'm not a victim of anything more than the programming that I got in that first 7 years. And it was interesting, because the real part that changed everything for me, Saviji, which you had run into before I did, was, as I said, I wasn't spiritual, but as I started to look at how the environment was controlling the cells, I started to recognize no two people are biologically identical. And I said, what does that mean? I can't exchange cells with you. You can't exchange cells or organs with me, because if I put my cells in your body, your immune system will say not self. And if you put your cells into somebody else's body, their immune system will say not self. I said, so what's the point? There's a self built into your cells that is different than the self built into your neighbor's cells. And I go, so why is that relevant? I said, well, what is the self? And that's what I started to look at. And it was like, on the surface of our cells are these protein antennas, just like TV antennas. No two people have the same set of these protein receptors. Their name for them is interesting. Self receptors, receivers of self. And I go, when I started looking, I said, but these receptors are on the outside of the cell. And I said, so why was it relevant? I said, well, if they're getting a signal of self, the self isn't in the cell is sent to the cell. And then all of a sudden I go, wait, then the self is not in here. And then I started getting a little quantum physics, started to realize we are energy units playing through what we appear to be a physical body. And that our identity is picked up by these receptors. And if I take the receptors off your cells, then your cells have no identity. I can put them into any human because it's not Sadhviji's cells, not Bruce's cells. And I go, so wait, so I'm still getting there, folks. There's a point coming here. And I started to recognize, well, wait a second. Bruce is a set of antennas. Well, we focus on the antennas in medicine. I go, no, you fail to understand. Antennas receive a signal. And all of a sudden I started to realize my identity is something signal in the environment that is being picked up by my cells. And so Bruce, the guy who's like thinking, going all the time, going, wait a minute, I'm a broadcast. Bruce is a broadcast. My body is a receiver, and I make a joke like, I'm a television set, Sadhviji, and you're watching the Bruce show right now. And the point about it is, well, the television can break, and then we say television's dead, and I go, yeah, that happens. And I say, is the broadcast still there? I say, you're watching a show, you say the television's dead, and I say, then what? I say, get another TV, plug it in, turn it on, and tune it to the station, and you're back on again. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, and this is it. I can't die. I'm not in here. I'm the broadcast. And then there's all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't die because I'm the TV, this physical thing. And what does it mean? It says, well, down the road, a baby is born with what? Oh, the same antennas. I'm back on, I got a new TV set. I said, does it make a difference, male or female? Nope, that's the TV set. Does it make a difference if it's a black, brown, red, yellow, white TV? I said, no, that's a TV set. We are the broadcasts. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, all of us come from this energy, and this energy is a field, and each of us is a receiving station of our own little broadcast out of the field. But collectively, we're the radio band. We got all the stations on here. We're all in the same radio band, but each of us comes in here.
There is no dream that you can dream that the power that is God, regardless of what name you call it by, has not dreamed bigger for you. So let's just, for the sake of everybody being on the same page, let's use life for God. Life has dreamed a dream for you. And your goal, your number one job is to figure out what that dream is and align yourself with the dream. Because the dream cannot come to you unless you're willing to meet it energetically in the same place. So if your energy is off, if you are not in flow with God's dream for you, with life's dream for you, if you are out of order, if you are out of sync, it cannot come to you. It will not come. Because the whole purpose of your life is to line yourself up with the purpose. And so if you are operating in fear, if you are operating in jealousy, jealousy will kill you. Any kind of anger or jealousy you have about anybody else. So here are a couple laws I have. The first law is the third law of motion in physics, which says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we showed that very beautifully in The Color Purple when Miss Seeley says to Mr., everything you even try to do to me is already done to you. That is not just a rhetorical saying, that is law. That is Newton's third law of motion in physics, which says everything that goes out is coming back. It's just like everything that goes up is coming down, may take it a long time to come down, is coming down. Everything that goes out is coming back, it's coming back. So, to answer the power of manifestation and meditation, what meditation does is sync you up with the source. What meditation does is allows you to literally tap into the power that created you so that you are in alignment with that. And so when you carry that out into the world, everything that you do comes from the center of that alignment that's coming from the source that we call God, we call divine energy, divine intelligence, whatever name you want to give it to, we call life. When you are synced up with life, life just gives to you. It opens doors, it creates experiences, it allows you to meet people, things show up you never thought were going to show up, and you are doing what is the purpose of your soul being here. So one of my favorite teachers is Gary Zukav, who says that authentic power is when you learn to use your personality, which I've done very well. Use your personality to serve the energy of your soul. So you are the bigger soul that has a personality. When you figure out how to take, I have a big personality. It's lovely, it's charming, but it's not me. It's not me. I'm here to do my soul's work. And I use my personality to serve the soul's work. And because I know what the soul's work is, I heard somebody ask earlier about what should you be praying. The prayer is use me. You are here to be used as a vessel from the source from which you have come. And everybody has a different talent. And the reason we're all so messed up is because you're looking at everybody else's talent. And wishing you had some of their talent. All the energy that you spend thinking about, wishing about, being jealous of, envious of anybody else is energy that you're not only putting out, it's going to come back to you negatively, but you're taking that away from you. All your energy should be forced on, what do I have to offer? What do I have to give? How can I be used in service? Because Dr. King's message of not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because greatness is determined by service. And there is not a job in here that you can do that you don't switch the paradigm to service and not make that job more fulfilling. I don't care what the job is. If you say, I'm a singer, I'm a dancer, I'm an artist, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a janitor, I'm a clerk, if you say, if I look at this from, how do I use this in service to something bigger than myself? It no longer becomes a job. It becomes an offering to the world. And that is why you're here. And when you can line up with whatever that is, line up with that. And all you have to do is keep asking the question. And ask the question in purity, not in, when's it gonna come? You know, like, I'm not looking for a man, but is that him over there? I played that game. When you can do that, then it comes. It opens up. Don't you see that? I try to do it every day, because if you don't, it's usually a more messed up day. Doesn't mean you don't get through life, because a lot of people getting through life. It just means your life isn't as enhanced. And everybody who's afraid of meditation, don't even call it meditation. Don't call it that. Just say, I'm going to have, I have what I have a prayer chair. I have a prayer chair. And then I have just a place where I just go and be still. And the reason why people have so many struggles is because you're struggling against what is for you. You're pushing against it. So when you find that you're not moving forward, you need to stop and get still and say, what am I resisting? What am I pushing against? Because it can't come through if you push against it. It only comes through if you're in flow with it. And it just flows. It flows. And it cannot flow if you're afraid. My spiritual practice is stillness when I first awaken. Allowing myself the moments of awareness and recognition that it is a magnificent thing to be a human being here and now. And the glory and beauty of that
sustains and has brought me a peace that I cannot even explain. There is a richness and a wealth and a peace that goes beyond any material possession or award or acclaim or anything that you could acquire. The peace of knowing that there is a presence, a force field. I use the word God, but God often seems small compared to what I know it to be. That's really emanating and vibrating through all things, and that I am a part of that, which I call God.
We live in a celebrity-obsessed world, don't we? Look at me. Notice me. The Tao teaches something completely the opposite. Listen to the 66th verse of the Tao. Water again. The sea stays low. And because the sea stays low, all of the rivers and all of the streams empty into it. Because it stays humble. Because it stays in that place of just allowing everything to come to you. He was trying to teach us the important lesson of letting what we know is coming come to us. I practice this so much more now in my life than I did at one time. I can remember years ago, I had written a book called Your Erroneous Zones back in the 70s, and it stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for something like 27 months. And many weeks it would be number 1, and then it would go down to number 3, and then it would go to number 2, and down to 7, and all of that. And I was doing the Tonight Show in those days on a regular basis. And what you do is you call and find out where you appear on the bestseller list for the following week on Wednesday. So you call up on Wednesday, not for the Sunday coming up, but for the following week. And I called home, and my ego was pretty strong, and I was very much into a lot of notice me. I really believe that true nobility is not about being better than anyone else now. It's about being better than you used to be. And I think I'm better than I used to be. And I know that I'm better than I used to be in every quality or every characteristic that I hold to be valuable. But in those days, I was into notice me. And I called home, and I had trained my wife to call the New York Times. She had this special number that she could call, and with a certain code, and she could find out where I was going to appear on the bestseller list the following week. So I called her up and I said, where am I on the bestseller list next week? I was out in California doing something, and she said, you're not on the bestseller list. I said, what are you talking about? I was number 1 on the bestseller list last week. I said, even my voice changed when I said, what do you mean I'm not on the bestseller list? She said, you're not on the bestseller list. I'm sorry. She said, your book is on the bestseller list. Big distinction there, isn't it? Between believing that this is me and recognizing that you can let go a little bit of that. Listen to verse 66 of the Tao. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Humility gives it its power. That's a very important principle to understand. And I live on the ocean, right next to it. It's my front yard. And always I watch it to learn something from this thing called the ocean, which is the most powerful source of life that we have on the planet. Without it, there's no life on this planet. And because it stays low. So what does this have to say to us? Do you have the capacity to get past that ego need to always be saying, notice me, look how important I am? There's been a proliferation of this lately with this celebrity silly stuff, isn't it? CNN is doing, full hour shows on silly little things about what happened to this particular celebrity or what happened to that celebrity, and the celebrity's never even done anything. And there's all of this talk about, and all of the new magazines. I mean, and you go through an airport and you look on the newsstand and all the same photos, just with different magazines. I don't even know what the names of all of them are, but there's like this huge market now that we have for people to get into a state of notice me, notice me, notice me. And how much do we train our young people, particularly in our schools and so on, that the one who is the star is the one who gets the most attention. The one who is the most important and the most valuable is the one that has the most people liking them and so on. This constant obsession with needing to be noticed. When in fact, what I have found for myself is the happiest moments of my life are when I can do it low and slow and not have anybody out there even know what I'm doing. To be able to, I mean, Louise never would have advertised the fact of some of the things I talk about with her generosity. She does it anonymously. It's almost always done in those ways. No, look at me, look and notice me, how important I am, and so on. So much to learn from that kind of wisdom, from that kind of inner connection to the Tao, the ability and the willingness to say, to do it anonymously, to say that you can just get done almost anything that you want to get done if you don't become obsessed with taking credit for it. Remember the movie The Magnificent Obsession? A movie made back, I think, in the 50s. And it was really about what was the magnificent obsession. It was the ability to be able to give anonymously. What is Alcoholics Anonymous? It is everybody stays anonymous. Nobody has a title. There's not even anybody in charge. There's no leaders of this. There's no president. There's no vice president. There's no organization. It's just, here's a group of people who just want to help other people whose lives are out of control. So here's a meeting place, and you come, and one day somebody will chair it, and then somebody else another day will chair it. And one of the things I found when I attend one of these meetings is that I feel you'll see so many people who are downtrodden, who feel as if their life has passed them by, who look like they don't have any teeth, they haven't shaved, they're dirty, they're God in disguise. Mother Teresa was asked the question about what she does when she was in Calcutta, and she said, every day, I see Jesus Christ in all of his distressing disguises. All of his distressing disguises. That you can see this source, you can see the Tao, you can see it when, particularly in those who are the most obscure, the most isolated from everyone else. And whenever I go to one of those meetings and I hear people get up and they tell their stories, I feel there's so much presence of the source, of God, of spirit, of Lao Tzu, of Tao, whatever you want to call it, in one of those meetings than I've ever felt in any church. I've never felt the presence of it more. And I encourage you, any of you watching this right now, go to one of those meetings. You don't have to be an alcoholic. You don't have to. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't call myself an alcoholic. I was never out of control. I drank, but I wasn't out of control. But I still go to those meetings. I have people in my own family that have struggled with addiction, and I go with them and I sit there and I listen to those stories, and I get shivers down my back when I think about how beautiful it is to be in the presence of people. All they want to do is help each other. There's a movie called My Name is Bill W. James Woods played and James Garner is in it. And his life just got totally out of control with addictions, totally out of control. And then he went to one of these meetings and he began to realize, and he said, we can actually take these people, and all we have to do is love them. All we have to do is, and he's so excited about the concept of being able to go out there and offer it. And I keep referring to Louise because she's such a hero to me. There was a time back in the 80s when our president wasn't even able to say the word AIDS, was he? I mean, he could come on. And here was this lady who, before this thing became the worldwide phenomenon that it is, was having meetings in her own house and bringing these people, these downtrodden people who had been labeled outcasts in society, and offering them a place to learn how to love each other and to care for each other. This was long before there was any celebrity status associated with trying to end this horrible crisis. that our country has and our world has had. There was James Wood, so excited about the idea of we can create a place where we're anonymous. Nobody has to know anything about us. We don't have to say our names. We don't have to say anything. We just have to come there and we can help each other. And before that happened, everybody who got out of control with addictions, particularly with alcohol, would die. There was no cure. There was no cure. And where did they find their cure? They found it in being anonymous. They found it in being obscure. They found it in having no organization. They found it in having no elected representative. They found it in having no rules. There are no rules. You just come and we care. If you've been 1 day or 1 hour sober, or even if you're drunk, you come. We care about you. And you are not that alcohol. Who you are is this divine soul. In the 36th verse of the Tao Te Ching, it says, "The gentle outlast the strong. The obscure outlast the obvious." Try to become a little more obscure, a little less interfering, a little less notice me, a little less, one of the specific kinds of things that you can do is just as you're about, when somebody else is talking, just as you're about to interject what you've been thinking about for the whole time, waiting for them to stop talking, just stop, to bite your tongue and say, "Tell me more." Or, "That's very interesting. I have never heard that point of view before." Even if they totally, completely disagree with everything that you stand for, to be willing to listen, to be able to stop. Practice it. I practiced it when I did these verses of the Tao. I practiced it every single day while I was working on that. Just staying obscure. And for me, that's not always so easy because of just being recognized wherever I go. And if I saw someone who was about to recognize me, I would just put my head down. I would just walk a little bit past them like something. Right now, I just want to be anonymous. Right now, I want to be obscure. The Tao says, storms always end. Verse 23, fierce winds don't blow all morning. A downpour of rain doesn't last all day. Who does this? Heaven and earth. You're already connected to everything you want or need. It will come to you at the exact perfect time, as the rivers and the streams come to the ocean at the perfect time and place. You gotta trust. You gotta know it's going to come to you. You don't have to chase after it. You can become a little less obsessed with your ego and your self-importance and who you are and what you've done, and you can get so much more done. And you know what? It's the most peaceful and sweet, delicious way. It's like the song that Cecilia was singing about the rose.
When we say human potential, unleashing human potential, it is not about reaching the peak, it is a trajectory. Because what our life is a combination of a certain amount of time and energy. Time is rolling away for all of us at the same pace. If you sit, it rolls away. If you sleep, it rolls away. If you do something, it goes away. If you don't do anything, it goes away. You're happy or miserable, it goes away. Time is running out for all of us. So it's only the energy that you can do different things with. If you bring your energies to a certain level of intensity and possibility, what somebody does in 10 years, you may do it in 1 year. This means if you live here for 100 years, it feels like in people's impact that you've created, it feels like you lived here for 1,000 years, simply because you have managed your life energies in a certain way. So for me, a human being impactful means, how conscious have you become? This is very important. Because if you're in compulsive cycles, then your energy gets wasted in so many things. If you observe people in a day, let's take 24 hours, in that anyway most people by prescription in America they sleep for 8 hours So 8 hours means 1/3 of life is gone. In the remaining 2/3 they have to eat, they have to, shower, bathroom, this, that, all this, another 2-3 hours gone. So literally 50% of life is gone, daily basis, just for basic maintenance of this life. 50% of the time is gone in maintenance, remaining 50%, what they have If you look at every single move that they may make with their body, their thought process, their emotions, you will see a whole lot of it is happening in compulsive cycles. Or in other words, if you are little sensitive to life, you will realize you are the biggest issue in your life. So this is one thing that I'm trying to do with people, that you are never the issue in your life. I'm not the issue. My thought, my emotion, my body is never the issue. My thought, my emotion, my energy and my body are my instruments of function. They are not impediments in my life. But I would say for 90% of the human beings, their own body, then the compulsions of the body, the compulsions of their thought, the compulsions of their emotions are ruling them most of the time.
The notion of the difference between pain and suffering I thought was very useful.
See, pain is physiological, it's there. If there's no pain, most people would not even know how to protect themselves. See, just because there's no pain in this, see what all you have done to it. Isn't it? See, there's no pain in this, so that's why you took it off. If there's no pain in your nose, maybe you would have taken it off. Because there are many advantages, you will take in about 22% extra oxygen if you just remove this one thing, contraption. Wherever there is no pain, people are messing with it like crazy, isn't it? They call this hairstyle, they call it so many things.
Yeah.
Suppose there was no pain in the entire body in Los Angeles, people would pull out their stomach bag and you think they wouldn't do it?
No, they probably would.
Only pain is helping them to preserve themselves, isn't it? So pain is good. There's no physiological pain. Most people would not know. I hear in United States there's one group, they call themselves something, I forget that word. They're actually cutting their fingers off, their hands off on the video.
Whoa.
They're posting it online. There's a group like that.
Whoa.
Can you imagine this?
No.
In spite of so much pain, if there was no pain, almost everybody would have cut themselves off in the name of fashion, they would have cut themselves into ribbons.
Wow.
So pain is a good thing physically, because that is your preservation, self-preservation mechanism. But suffering is something that you do in your mind. So pain that happens in your body, you take it in your mind and multiply it 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times depending on how capable you are or how stupid you are, and suffer it 1,000,000 times over. Right now, most human beings are like this. What happened 10 years ago, they can still suffer. What may happen day after tomorrow, they already suffer. They are not suffering life, they think they are suffering life. They are not suffering life. They are suffering the two most fantastic faculties that human beings alone have, a vivid sense of memory and a fantastic sense of imagination. The survival process has become easier than ever before. Believe me, in the morning if you need a bucket full of water, if you had to walk a mile to the river to get one bucket of water, and your family needed 25 buckets of water, you would have no time to mess yourself. Now you have a lot of time to mess yourself because our survival is better organized than ever before. Another thing is, most human beings do not know how to manage their biochemistry without physical activity. I have seen a whole lot of people, particularly teenage boys and girls between the ages of 12 and 16, who come to me with some severe, violent problems within themselves. If you leave them like that, they may kill themselves or kill somebody else. they're in that kind of state. Many of them have even killed their parents, it has happened all over the world. And in 2017, when I came to know that in India, which is not so much suicidal in that sense because there's a huge family support and stuff like that, in spite of that, in 2017, 18,600 children below 18 years of age committed suicide, out of which 7,200 are below 15 years of age. So 12, 13, 14-year-olds who must be bubbling with life are wanting to take their own lives. Why? Obviously we're doing something fundamentally wrong with the society, isn't it?
Yes.
Our goals and our stupid ideas of what is success is driving them nuts. Because we are trying to use our children like racehorses.
That's interesting. And when you say that as something that represent us, that we've turned into something amazing, or in what way are they like racehorses?
See, when you understand life as a race, if you're in a race, what's the objective? You must reach the finish line quick, isn't it?
Yes.
What is the finish line of your life?
Death.
There you have it. This may not be a conscious process, but life within you is understanding it like that. When you… see, you must understand this, whether you are conscious of it or not, any human being. Right now, if you make yourself miserable, you must understand you are sending a message to every cell in the body that I don't want to live. You might not have articulated it in your head yet, but when you become miserable, you notice suddenly your body seems heavy and it's like, doesn't want to get up from this chair. Have you seen this?
Yes.
When you're happy, you're willing to bounce at everything and do everything, bend backwards if necessary. Why this is happening is the message has gone to every cell in the body, this guy wants to die. They're all thinking, okay, what can we do to help him? But by then, of course, you recover. So you want to die, you want to live, you want to die, you want to live. The body is getting confused because you must understand this is a very intelligent body. It's taking instructions from you. Every cell in the body has an enormous sense of memory and intelligence. If you keep sending wrong messages, if they act, you're dead. Because you're sending contradictory messages, you're not dead, you're half dead. You can give it any number of exotic names. Essentially, you have turned your intelligence against yourself. This is supposed to work for you, but now you've turned it against yourself, it's working against you.
When we stop expecting things to be the way that we think they should be, when we stop forcing outcomes, and when we start allowing what is of the highest good to be our only agenda, our only intention, that's when the universe truly has our back. That's when we can live what it means to surrender. True surrender comes when we stop praying for what we think we need and we start connecting and grounding in what could possibly be of the highest good for all. When we stop praying for what we think we need and we start allowing what is of the highest good for all. So true manifesting is about receiving what is of the highest good for all. And it begins not just with how will I get what is of the highest good, but how can I be open to what is of the highest good? How can I open up my consciousness to release what I think I need and get grounded in what is possible and what is of the highest good, not just for me and my agenda, but the highest good for all. That's the message. So you're doing everything right in that you're open to a spiritual practice, you're willing to grow, you're showing up for your practice, you're reading books, you're doing the work, you're here on Dear Gabby, you're showing up, you're showing up, you're showing up. You're doing a lot of doing, though, and you're also doing a lot of expecting. And so a lot of doing and a lot of expecting are two major blocks to your ability to attract what it is that you want into your life. And so it's the doing that actually creates sort of a manic manifesting vibration, which is, how do I get that? What do I do next? Got to do this thing next, got to do this thing next. And that lacks the belief system that I can be still and I can allow. That's number one. Number two, being in the expectation of what you think things should be is another block to your manifesting power and your super attractor power, which is what I call it, because Your expectations are limiting the possibilities. Your expectations are limiting the highest good, as this card says. So when we start to pray for what is of the highest good, rather than intend and pray for what we think we need, that's when the universe can conspire with what it is that is of the highest good for all. So ultimately what's happening is all the doing is energetically blocking, and all the expecting is blocking the manifestation as well, because when you're in this tunnel vision of expectation, it should be this way, I should be further along, I shouldn't be here. What's happening is you're missing the opportunity to recognize where you are, how great things are in this moment, what is possible in this moment, the creative possibility in this moment, the exciting potential in this moment. You're blocking it. I want you to sit on your ass. I want you to stop doing. I want you to start being, which is what you also said. You're actually Dear Gabbying yourself. You said, I want to embody the feeling. I want to embody the emotion. The being is a presence. It's an energy. It's a state. It's not an action. True manifesting does require us to show up for our desires. You got to pick up the phone and then call a job interview, and you have to ask for the date, and you have to do whatever it is that you want to create. But ultimately, the greatest source of power that we have to attract what we want is how we feel.
God shows us how to do this in the book of Genesis. The Bible says that God stepped out on nothing and said, let there be something, and let there be light, and there was light, and the evening and the morning was the first day. And guess what? No angels, no choir, no spouse, no friends, no person came along, nobody started dancing, no praise team came along and said, God clapped for himself. He said, and it was good. And it was good. It doesn't have to be finished to be good. Some of you wait too late to clap. You're not going to clap till it's finished, but you got to clap behind every accomplishment and celebrate every step. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in the way. And every time you take a step, you need to clap for that step, because at least I'm further than where I was. I may not be where I'm going, but I'm further than where I was. Am I talking to anybody this morning? And so you need to praise God for baby steps. Praise God for progress. Praise God for improvement. Celebrate within yourself and not be afraid to look yourself in the mirror and say, you did that well. You did that real well. You'll never be able to determine who you need in your life until you feel your own void. You'll choose somebody out of your pain, and then when you get well, you don't want them. On the other extreme, but equally as dangerous, but the antithesis of inferiority, is the assumption that what God has given to you requires nothing of you. You don't put anything into it. You just received it, you got it, you think it ought to be there. Anything you add to your life requires your attention. If you have a goldfish, you have to feed it. If you get a cute little puppy, you got to walk it. If you buy a car, you're going to need oil. If you buy a car, you're going to need gas. Anything you add to your life is going to require more of you. Stop adding more than you're willing to maintain. Say this word with me. No. Some of you have said yes so much because you assume that you are collecting whatnots to keep on a shelf, but in reality, you keep saying yes and not really taking care of what you already got. You keep adding more and more and more and more to your life, and then somewhere on some therapist's couch, you say, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm nervous, and I got anxiety, and I guess you do. To him whom much is given, much is required. This grandiose mentality that you have has led you to a place of utter frustration. You underestimate what greatness costs. This is a dangerous thing. You don't seek to keep up, advance your skills, study or work out. You don't seek to maintain the relationship, keep it spicy and interesting. You think I got that on lock. You do not have that on lock. Come on. You never have it on lock. You don't have your husband on lock. You don't have your wife on lock. You don't have your career on lock. You don't have your child on lock. You don't have your mama on lock. You don't ever have anything on lock. That's why you gotta celebrate people while you have them. You have to love them while you got them. You gotta pour into them while they're there. You don't have it on lock. Somebody is after your job right now. Somebody's after your spouse right now. Somebody's after your house right now. Somebody's after your position right now. Never fall into complacency and think that you are so wonderful that your just being there is all that's required. No. Complacency will not do it. You have got to put some grind in it, some sweat into it, some work into it. That's why you don't need too many its. Because every it you take on is going to take something from you. It's going to give something to you, but it's going to take something from you. And there may not be enough of you to handle all the places you said yes to. And you've got to be able to evaluate, am I a pint-sized container with a gallon-sized appetite? A lot of people that people think are humble are not necessarily humble. Humility is not a facial expression. Humility is not rich people wearing poor folks' clothes.
Oh, hallelujah.
With secret Bentleys on other islands and places and mansions you cannot see. Don't buy into the facade of humility. Humility that we buy into is often fake humility. Humility is an inner awareness of your own frailty. It is an inner awareness of your own frailty. And if you want to increase your humility, the easiest way to increase your humility is to work on your gratitude. Gratitude, being grateful, being thankful, being appreciative. What we do as a people is that we are often overly impressed with people who look humble, only to find out that they have hidden lives of great success and they wear uniforms like actors in plays because that's what you require. I choose to be myself. Life is too short to be anybody else. I wear what I like. I eat what I like. I drive what I like. I talk to who I want to talk to. I am authentically me. But in that authenticism of being me is also an awareness that everything I have, everything I own, and everything I get to do, like being here, is such a gift from God. See, you think me coming is a gift to you, but from my perspective, me being here is a gift from God. My mother would have dreamed to stand on this stage. You were just a place she read about in a book, under a bed, raised by a sharecropper, working a field they couldn't own. When you understand that, it takes away the feeling of entitlement. You must understand humility is in the story you tell yourself about yourself. Everything that matters about you, good or bad, is a result of the narrative in your head. Check out the story you tell yourself about yourself and rebuke all of the temptations that we have to be entitled. It's about time you recognize me. You should have recognized me a long time ago. Nobody has to ever recognize you. There are 8 billion people on the planet. There are 8 billion people on the planet, and that you got to be chosen is an absolute gift. And the day you stop thinking it's a gift, you lose your power to keep it going. To me, that attitude of gratitude is the substratum of humility.
How do I enhance my competence? See, let's say you want to run on the field. Let's say you want to run a race. You want to run 100 meters. It is not running that you have to work on right now. You have to work on your legs and lungs and muscle and everything, isn't it so? So, if you want to become a great engineer, yes, definitely an institute like this is crucial on one level. But any number of people might have come here and gone, not all of them became great engineers. Though they might have produced hundreds of great engineers, still not all of them will become, simply because of their own individual attitudes and competence and whatever else, isn't it? So, whatever the institute can do for you, it is doing. One foremost thing that you need to do is to enhance your own physical and mental capabilities. Because if you want to be a good engineer, you need a working brain. Just having a degree of engineering may be a passport to a job, but it is not a passport to success, isn't it? So to have a working brain, which the engineering degree will not freeze. Usually lots of degrees, when people acquire degrees, they freeze their brains. They think they can… now they have finished using it and now they can rest it for the rest of their lives. It is not so. This is only to enhance your capability. This is just an organized effort. A school, a college, an institute is just an organized effort towards that, because each individual cannot craft it for himself. That is why an institution. Otherwise, an institution has no other purpose. It is here to just organize that possibility of you striving to be of a certain competence. But that is a mass application. But as an individual, your most important thing is you as a human being, you are functioning at the fullest level. If that has to happen, there are other dimensions which one needs to explore. Unfortunately, though these sciences and technologies for inner well-being have been the mainstay of this culture for thousands of years, today we are largely losing it for various reasons, because we want to imitate somebody else. We don't want to imitate our grandfather Topiwala anymore. We want to imitate the hat seller from another country. Because of that, we are losing those things, but we should not. We have to bring it back into our lives. This is very much a part of the way the culture itself is structured, that it is all about the human being. See, this is the only culture which talks about, which even an illiterate person in this culture is aware of, that you can actually evolve to another dimension of existence. Even if I go into a village and talk to an illiterate peasant who has not read anything, who doesn't know anything, who's not heard any of this stuff, even to him if I go, he will not ask me, give me a golden horse or something, he'll say, "Enakku mukti venum Swami." He's saying he wants ultimate liberation. Where did this fellow get this? Nowhere else on the planet this is possible. Nowhere else on this planet is it possible that an illiterate person is thinking that he can break his present dimension of existence and go to another place, whatever that place is. So, this was bred into our culture so deep, we should not lose it. It was not just the idea, there are technologies to become free. If you became free from the process of your body and the process of your mind, if you can sit outside of it and work it, you would work it brilliantly, do you understand? You would be able to use this body and use this mind only when you are able to not treat it as myself. These are powerful instruments in your life. These instruments can be employed the way you want it, only when you have an outside access to it.
But when you realize that all your name, your form and everything you see is provisional, two things happen. To some people, they have immediate, what we could only metaphorically call the dark night of the soul. They go into a deep depression because everything they thought was real is no longer real, including their own name, form, body and mind. Some people get so scared that they have a bad trip. Some people cross that threshold and discover nirvana or enlightenment. And they say, wow, I thought I was squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, but I'm a timeless being that can morph myself into any experience, including the human experience, which is amazing. But the human experience is also that which causes existential depression. So the causes of human suffering, since you brought it up, are brought up in Eastern wisdom traditions as, number one, you suffer because you don't know who you are. You confuse yourself with your body-mind experience. Number two, you grasp and cling at experiences which are evanescent and transitory and dreamlike. You say, what happened to your childhood? It's over. What happened to yesterday? It's over. What happened to 5 minutes ago? It's over. What happens to these words? By the time you hear them, they don't exist. So, Wittgenstein, the German philosopher, said, we are asleep. Our life is a dream, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So what do you wake up to? When you cross this threshold, you wake up to your true self, which is not body or mind, but the awareness in which that experience is happening. So grasping and clinging at a dream is the second cause of human suffering. The third is being afraid of anything that's unpleasant, pain, abandonment, being treated by someone not respectfully. So that's, there's aversion to certain experiences. Third cause of suffering. Fourth is identifying, which is related to it, with your ego identity. And fifth is the fear of death. Now they're all connected. They're all the same fear. And they are not knowing who you are. This is the biggest question that humans, or everybody should be asking. Who am I? What am I? Am I the changing experience of this body, which is a perceptual activity? Am I the experience of the changing mind or the changing personality? Because you don't have the same personality when you were a kid or maybe even 10 years ago. What is it at the basis of this? When you start that reflective self-inquiry, ask yourself, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? Go into the stillness of meditation, you have what wisdom traditions have called revelation, revealed truth. Now, that sounds very grand. I would say just call it insight. Meditation, mindfulness, awareness of body, awareness of mind, awareness of mental space, awareness of the web of relationship, awareness with that which we call the universe. It leads you ultimately to the awareness of awareness. And when you discover that, that's nirvana.
What does someone like you do to meditate? How do you meditate?
When I came to the monastery, the meditation I was taught was mantra meditation, which is chanting on beads. So I chant a mantra. And as I began the process, I realized how challenging it was to be present into the sound of the mantra and to be totally in a space, in a zone of thoughtlessness where there's nothing bothering your mind and you're completely present and listening to the sound and totally absorbed, in the sound. I realized that it was a massive uphill task. And I think it comes, that challenge comes from the fact that we've got so used to multitasking that our mind functions on 20 tracks. So when we're just on the meditation track, there are 19 other tracks to deal with. You know, you have your personal life, you have relationship issues, you have professional issues. There's so many things going on. You have issues coming from family, so much going on in the country. There's so much that's occupying our mental space. And when you actually want to get onto the track of meditation by kind of just putting all of this in the back seat, it becomes practically impossible. And a lot of people tell me this. And when they're trying to meditate, this is what happens to them. And I share my journey with them. This is exactly what happened to me when I started. It's been 25 years now, every single day without one day's gap, 1.5 hours every day. And I tell them that it's not a challenge today. It would be very high-headed to say that, okay, I've reached a state of enlightenment. When I sit for meditation, everything's kind of there and I'm totally absorbed. Very high-headed, I feel, to say that. But I did a few things that I feel can benefit those who want to really get into a deeper state of meditation. I look at meditation in two ways. A is the meditation as in the practice. And B is everything that we do in our life as meditation. You know? And I prefer to work more on everything in my life as a meditation, which feeds into my practice of meditation.
100%. But do not neglect the practice.
No, do not neglect the practice, for sure. Yeah. So, I'll tell you what I do, for instance. 1 meal a day, I just eat by myself. 2 meals I take with my friends, some of my monk friends, where we discuss, chat, eat. 1 meal is just by myself. The reason being, I want to be present, mindful, in the moment, to savor the entire experience of touching, feeling, smelling, tasting that food. I avoid forks and spoons as much as is possible because I want to touch and feel that experience of the food. Now, the reason I do it is because it just means no phones, no books, nobody to talk to, and just being there eating. Correct? So what I'm doing is, by just eating that 1 meal by myself, training my mind to be in the present. Like we're talking now. There's 3 meetings lined up for me tonight. And there's a restaurant called Candy and Greens at Breach Candy. The family is a very close friend, you know. So they've just opened up a new rooftop terrace. I'm getting message after message, could you come down today evening for dinner? Right? But it's not on my mind. It's not on my mind. Nothing outside of our conversation between you and me right now is on my mind. So why do I do it? It's because right now I'm training my mind to be in the present. When I used to be in the bathroom, I would sing. Like a big thing for me used to, of course, earlier I would sing a lot of cinema and movie songs. And now I sing some spiritual songs, bhajans, whatever. And then one day I realized, hey, wait a minute. This is not right. Because neither am I into the singing, nor am I into the experience of bathing. So if I'm singing, I'm missing the experience of bathing. And if I'm bathing, I'm not into my singing. So why am I doing 2 things at the same time? I stopped singing. Just focusing on the experience of the water coming down my body and experiencing that. So to me, these little things through the day matter a lot to me. And I think that's more of meditation to me. Because then what I do here feeds into my mainstream practice of meditation. And what I do here feeds into the little things as well. So it's kind of a loop, one feeding into other.
We are a social animal. We're human beings, social animal. And particularly in modern time, the reality, economy, environment, and many things heavily interdependent. That's the reality. Unlike, I think, past sort of as the ancient time. Ancient time, more or less independent, self-sufficient. They say not depend on your interest or your future, not depend on other. Now, completely change. So even from the selfish viewpoint, you have to take care about others' well-being. You just think yourself, the blind selfish. Think yourself, forget other, or worst thing, exploit other, cheating other, bully other. Ultimately you suffer. Through these mischievous way, you may gain some temporary sort of benefit, but in deep inside, you feel uncomfortable. Then eventually, you truly become a lonely person. Nobody loves you. Nobody respects you. If you take care of others as a human brother, sisters, sincerely, seriously, then everybody become your friend. So, when you have truly trusted friend there, if you need something, you can ask them. If you becoming friendless or lonely person, and when you really facing some problems, nobody you can share. So ultimately we are social animal. So even other animal, no law, no education, no religion, but you see, they have some kind of sort of feeling. Their own individual survival depend on rest of the community or herds. So they work together. I am one of the individual out of 7 billion human being. If human being, rest of the human being, happy, peaceful, I get maximum benefit. The rest of the world get trouble. How can I escape from that? And with that feeling, when I meet people, one people, or one person, or 10 people, 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, I always consider them as my brothers, sisters. That brings me in mental level completely relaxed. If I feel I'm something different from them, then some nervousness, some anxiety may develop. So once your own way of thinking open, reach out to them as a close friend, that tremendous sort of benefit, peace of mind. Then others also no longer feel stranger. Another human brothers, like that. So that I think nowadays we really need that. So through that way, awareness. Then from children, I think youngsters, they know. Just one child remain lonely, may cry, and play with other children. Feel very happy. So that's the human nature. So sometimes we grown up, then we always calculate, if I make friendship with that, how much I get some benefit. Or make friendship, then I can exploit or something. Then genuine basis of friendship no longer there, destroyed. Basis of genuine friendship is trust. Trust depend on openness. Like that. So through these things we can train. And then mental level, no matter what, your physical level, busy. But mental level, always calm, restful, relax. Immense benefit for your health. So mental health, body health, very close link. So the ultimate source of mental health is warm-heartedness. That's my belief. Maybe wrong. My friend have to research, more research work.
I decided that I wanted to not know what we know, but what is the source of knowing. Okay, it's not what you know. You know, what you know these days, you can look it up, go Google it. So it's not important what you know. Anybody can find out anything about anything these days. You know, I can look up how many galaxies there are in the universe, or how does epigenetics work, or how does the brain function. That's not the key to creativity. To creativity and higher consciousness is, how do you know what you know? What is the source of knowing and experience? What is it that knows the experience of the body? What is it that knows the experience of the mind? What is it that knows the experience called the color red? And where is that experience happening? When you go past your ego identity, there's a bigger identity that is so huge, it's incomprehensible. It can't even be described. And there's a freedom and a joy that comes from that. And I had glimpses of that, but this period of intense stillness. And by the way, since then, I've kept a week of silence every year. Sometimes I do more. And that week of silence, usually in September, I do every year, just to go back to the taste of timeless being instead of, our ego identity, which we keep polishing every day now, especially these days with social media and books and promotions and you name it. Reality is one wholeness. It includes all subjects, all objects, and all modes of knowing. What we have access to is a human mode of knowing. In my book, Metahuman, I talk about the butterfly, the painted lady, who smells the world through her antenna. Tastes the world through her feet. Sees the world with 30,000 lenses that move like a kaleidoscope. Hears the world through her wings. What is reality to that little species? Some insects see the world 360 degrees, because they have these what we call complex eyes with multiple lenses. You can only see within a certain range, but there are insects that can see 360 degrees. So what is reality? Reality, what we call reality, what today's science calls reality, comes under the heading of naive realism. Einstein was a naive realist. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory fashion. It's a word in the science of philosophy. Naive realism means that the physical world exists exactly as perceived by the 5 human senses. Now, obviously, that's not true. Other species experience the world through different modes of sensory perception. The second aspect of naive realism is that the physical world, as perceived by the 5 human senses, would exist even if no one was observing it. Well, how do you prove that? And firstly, it's naive because we know that the world is more than what is perceived by the 5 human senses. So this leads us to a solution actually of the hard problem of consciousness, which is get rid of the idea that the world is physical. What we call of the world as physical, even your physical body, is a perceptual activity. And that perceptual activity for you and me is a human perceptual activity through human consciousness, not through bat consciousness, not through mosquito consciousness, not through plant consciousness, which would fit in with panpsychism. But non-dualism says, go beyond that. There is only one consciousness that is differentiating, undifferentiated consciousness, differentiating into these different species of consciousness that form a matrix of conscious beings that are collectively projecting this universe.
Let one human being honestly say, when you are with your most loving parents, however doting and wonderful they were to you, that you never felt this is not where you want to be. That is a dishonest human being. Because love gets tedious, somebody's fondness gets very tedious, comfort gets tedious. Because the nature of life is, it wants to constantly expand. If there is no room for expansion, it doesn't matter you are kept in a whatever, I won't use because everybody uses the word golden palace. I think golden palace is totally unaesthetic in my my visual perception. I hate golden palace, but whatever is the most wonderful palace, or as you say Shangri-La, whatever, it'll get tedious. All the heaven-bound people, they don't know how bored they will be within 3 days in that place of goodness. So I'm saying it doesn't matter. It's not because there's something wrong with your parents. They may be most wonderful people, but the very nature of a human being is such. Only if you're a pet animal, if you have reduced yourself to that, you're just happy with the meals that you're getting and somebody is fondling you once in a way and you're happy with that. For that you must be a pet animal, you should not be born as a human being. Once you're born as a human being, it is natural wanting to break barriers. So when you're young as a child or a teenager, you think barriers means they're all physical. Before you understand, the barriers are not really physical. Whether you build your own house or you live in your parents' house or you live in a slave master's house, the house and walls are not the barrier. It is all within us. Before you realize that, or how soon you realize that, will lead to either transformation or frustration. I would say there's literally no human being who's not confronted with a thought and an emotion like that, but they manage to brush it aside. It doesn't bother them enough. The pain of not knowing doesn't tear them, that's the whole problem. They come to terms with ignorance, they make a deal with ignorance. They will build relationships where everybody will confirm this is the best way to live. Of comfort, companionship, love, affection. These are all things you're seeking. I know a whole lot of people have raised human emotions to heavens. If you say love, they say divine love. If you say joy, they say divine joy. If you say bliss, they say divine bliss. You don't need any God's help to be joyful, loving, peaceful. As a human being, you're endowed with these qualities. So all those who deprived themselves of that, they either seek God or they settle for a dog. Yeah, usually. Because they want unconditional love, this is a demand. Because the nature of love is such that it's like a flower, if you don't watch it for 2 minutes, it'll fall. It'll wither and fall right there. Either you want to let it fall, or you have to nourish it every moment, or you have to concretize it. That means you take a picture and keep it on your phone screen, or you institutionalize it with marriage or this or that. So essentially, well, I'm not against any institution because institutions are needed in the world to operate, otherwise there'll be chaos. That is a different thing. But you cannot institutionalize joy or peace, like right now we think United Nations is the institution for peace. No, you cannot institutionalize peace. You cannot institutionalize joy. You cannot institutionalize love or anything for that matter. The institutions are functional instruments in a given society. I have utmost respect for them because without it, a whole lot of people wouldn't know how to live. You need institutions, there is a government, there's a democratic process, there are variety of things, all right, there are courts, there are parliaments. Well, 90% of the time some nonsense may be happening there, but still these institutions are important because without that there will be total chaos. So I'm not talking against institutions, but institutionalizing things that happen within a human being is a silly effort.
You say the ego is destined to dissolve. How so?
Well, first we need to see clearly what the ego is, because sometimes people use that word and they mean different things.
Yeah, they just mean you're being arrogant or…
That's right.
Yes.
It's a much wider thing. It's not just being selfish or being arrogant or thinking yourself superior. That's a small aspect of ego. Ego is basically a self-identification with the stream of thinking. So that collectively I would say the beginning of ego is actually described at the beginning of the Old Testament, where there is the famous story of the apple, which everybody knows, even non-Bible readers. So it is said there that they ate of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge and good and evil. And that was when they lost that state that is externalized in the Bible and called paradise. What does that mean? To me, that means it is the arising of the ability to think and to differentiate between things. This is good, this is bad. To make statements like that, to make judgments like that, which is the ability to think, which is so this is a mythological description of what happened to humanity. And at first, the ability to think was not entirely bad. They lost something, they lost a deeper state of connectedness, but I don't think that deeper state of connectedness with being was lost immediately as it's described in the Bible. I believe it took a long, long time of increased thinking until people reached a point where they derived their entire sense of who they are from the stream of thinking. So what that looks like in a person's life is there is almost, one could say, a mind-made entity which is made up entirely of memories and past conditioning and mental concepts. And this entity, which really is all made up of thinking, people derive their sense of who they are from this mind-made entity. So it's a mind image of who I am. People have split themselves in two. They think there's me and there's myself. Me and my story. The ego is the story of me that people identify with.
You say in the New Earth, ego is no more than this: identification with form, which primarily means thought forms.
Yes, that's right. That's what the ego is.
And you say if evil has any reality, and it has a relative, not an absolute reality, this is also its definition of evil: complete identification with form.
Yes.
Physical forms, thought forms, emotional forms.
That's right.
And that this results in a total unawareness of my connectedness with the whole, my intrinsic oneness with every other, as well as with the source. This forgetfulness is original sin, suffering, or delusion. And that's, when I heard that, I thought, yes, you're right. For every evil act we've ever heard described, or when we think of people as, doing sinful things, it is because of a complete and utter disconnection, a lack of understanding that I am that person that I am attempting to violate. I am that which I am jealous of. I am that.
Yes. It means you cannot sense the aliveness anymore that is in the other person. So you have desensitized yourself to the aliveness. Now, you can only do that if you've already done this to yourself, because by living through mental definitions of who you are, you desensitize yourself to the deeper aliveness of who you truly are beyond thinking.
Okay.
So you become, what arises then is a conceptual identity. I'm this, that, or the other. And then once you are trapped in your own conceptual identity, which is based on thinking and image making by the mind, on your past, then you do the same to others. And this is the beginning of that is always when you pronounce judgments on another person, and then you believe that judgment to be the truth, calling people, attaching labels to people. That's the beginning of desensitizing yourself to who that human being truly is.
I'm having a conversation here with Eckhart Tolle, who is author of The Power of Now, of course, and A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. So if you are not your story, and most people, I do believe, think that they are. We live in a world where people believe I am my story. I, was born in this family, and this is where I was raised, and these are the things that happened to me, and this is what I did. If you are not your story, then who are you?
That's a very good question, because you cannot deny, of course, that these things exist.
Right.
Your memories of the past, things that you suffered, perhaps even things suffering that you might have inflicted on others.
And even not all suffering, my family connections, the people I love.
Yes, you have a so-called past, you have relationships, all that is fine. It is not problematic unless you become totally lost in that dimension alone. So if you have no access to a deeper sense of aliveness or beingness beyond the stream of thinking, because really all that is based on memory. All your past, how do you experience your past? You experience your past as memories. And what are memories? Memories are thoughts in your head. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're totally identified with all these thoughts in your head, then you are completely trapped in your past history. There's no sense of anything beyond that in your life.
Right.
So the important thing is, am I more than my personal history?
Well, you speak in A New Earth, you speak about how advertisers are counting on us to believe in the labels, and that we identify with, particularly in our society, exclusive labels. And the more exclusive the label, the more we identify with it.
Yes, that's right, because the ego wants to be special, one way or another. Every ego wants to be special. And if the ego cannot be special by being superior to others, the ego would also be quite happy with being specially miserable. So you may have seen, witnessed people who are saying, one person says to the other, I have a headache. The other person says, you have a headache? I've had a headache for weeks. So people actually compete. Who is more miserable, you or me? That's another, it's just the ego that does that is just as big as the ego that says, I'm superior to you. Because the ego always wants to be special. So if you recognize in yourself that unconscious need to be special, then you're already half free, because when you recognize all the patterns of the ego, and specialness is one pattern of the ego, another pattern of the ego, it wants to be right all the time. Another pattern of the ego is it actually it loves conflict with others. And that's an amazing thing. Of course, it's unconscious, because the ego defines itself through a boundary that it draws between this is me and that is the other. And that's an important word, because the ego needs to emphasize the otherness of the other person. And that happens on a personal level when people are suspicious of other people's motives and so on. And there's a need for enemies, which is deeply built into the ego. The ego needs enemies because it defines itself through emphasizing the otherness of others. And nations do it, religions do it. The believer, if you identify with one particular religion, and for many people religion is only a mind structure, not in its deepest sense, but for many people a religion is an ideology that they identify with, and then they need the non-believer, the other, because by having the other, they feel their own sense of identity more strongly.
Right. And they need the other in order to feel their own sense of identity.
Yes.
More strongly.
Yes.
The story we tell ourselves is how we perceive the world. And so then when we create the difficulties in our life, it reaffirms the belief that life is hard, that it's really someone out there that's doing it to us, that it's a circumstance in the past that created this. Okay, let's take away the person that did it. Let's shoot him to the moon. Let's erase your past. Now, what are you going to do now? You still got to do something, right? You're still alive. And I say we already know how to do this. We already know how to do this. We're wired to be creators. We're wired to do this. The thing that stops us, for the most part, in doing it is really the hormones of stress, because living in stress constantly is living in survival, and living in survival is living in emergency. In an emergency, it's not a time to create. In an emergency, it's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to learn. It's not even a time to sit still. So most people then that are living in stress and living in survival, they can't believe in a future yet because it's not a time to create. So getting people to that point where they make up their mind, and they make up their mind enough to begin to think, there's got to be a better way, there's got to be something else. That awakening process typically happens when people reach their lowest denominator. They hit rock bottom, because then they can see themselves through the eyes of somebody else. You feel so altered, you're not returning any texts. You feel so altered, you don't want to go to dinner with your buddies. You feel so altered, you don't want to watch your favorite TV show. You're just disconnected. And that's when you start observing yourself. But my message is, why wait for that? I mean, you can learn and change in pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in joy and inspiration. If you're waking up every morning being defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, and you get up and you're inspired from an elevated self now instead of a limited self, you could observe the old self from an elevated state instead of that diminished state. And people are doing that. So they are aware of those thoughts. And yes, it takes effort. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But just because you have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And when you start looking and observing those thoughts, I think you are like Gandalf, because Gandalf also said, you may not pass. When he meant like that kind of severity when it comes to how we make up our mind about things. That's the kind of energy or intention that begins to create the biggest volume of change in our life. And I've interviewed thousands of people in our work that have healed from really serious health conditions. And I would say about 90% of them, when I ask them, so what happened? The first thing they say all the time is, I just made up my mind. I just made up my mind I was going to do this. And they made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. And the choice that they made caused their body to respond to a new mind. In fact, the choice they made became a moment that they would never forget. It was an event. And the stronger the emotion they felt, the more they paid attention to the choice. And in a sense, they were remembering their future. And the body emotionally was getting a sampling, a taste of the future. And they are aligned to that future. And that's when the body's healing began. That's when the miracle started, right in that moment. That's how powerful we really are. Now, what if you did that every day? What if you made up your mind every single day you weren't going to get up from your meditation until you were that person you wanted to be? Game on now. Because you'd have to do battle with all the things that are not consistent with it. And that's exactly how our brain works. So then, if you want to be wealthy, you can't feel lack. You want to be a master, you can't judge your coworker. You want to be like somebody great in history, then you better execute peace in every area of your life. That's the law. So you take the prayer out on the road now. You take the prayer, you're the living example of the prayer. That's where it matters the most. And that's when people start getting suspicious and say, Sean, man, did you change your medication? I mean, you're looking way too happy all of a sudden. Well, you're not relying on anything outside of you to bring you joy. You're overcoming yourself every day. And people say to me, well, why do you do your meditations in the morning? I always say, easy. Because if I can overcome myself at the beginning of the day, the rest of the day is easy. Because that's the biggest mastery, right? Absolutely. Is the self.
If you go outside in the garden and try to catch an ant, the BHU ant, who is born here, who's grown up here, and probably he'll die here, that BHU ant, if you try to catch him, he'll say, okay, to hell with my life, okay, crush me if you want. Is it so? He'll do everything to protect himself. He values his life, isn't it? Very much or no? Tiny little creature that we may not even notice, we may step on him without even seeing him, unfortunately. But he values his life immensely. Does he or no? He's got spark. But you, a human being, at least on this planet, you're the peak of evolution. Physiologically at least. Yes? If other behavioral aspects, if we may have questions but physiologically at least, the most evolved creature on the planet. What the most evolved creature on the planet means is, it has the most complex neurological system and it has the highest level of cerebral capability. That means you can think, you can remember, you have memory. You have a very vivid sense of memory and a fantastic sense of imagination. An ant doesn't have such a vivid sense of memory, nor does he have any great imagination. He has some. But he has a presence of mind about the life that he is living. Because the education systems that you're going through right from kindergarten level is such that it is about everything except you. It's about everything else. Somebody is PhD in tourism, somebody is PhD in biotechnology, somebody is PhD in something. Nothing about this. How does this function? There is no attention at all. A human being functions. How rich is your memory determines what you will do and what you will not do right now, isn't it so? So memory is important, the present experience is important, and how vivid is your imagination for tomorrow is very important. Right now the problem is, these things have all gotten mixed up because discipline of faculty has simply not come. Nothing has been taught to our children that there needs to be… Discipline means people think English kind of discipline, walking like this like idiots. Discipline of faculty is not there. Because of this, your own mind turns against you. What happened 10 years ago, you still suffer? Hello? What may happen day after tomorrow, you already suffer? Because there's no discipline of faculty. You don't know how to use your memory, you don't know how to use your imagination. Your memory makes you suffer, your imagination makes you suffer, and you think you are suffering your life. You are not suffering your life, you are only suffering the two greatest faculties of being human, vivid sense of memory and a fantastic sense of imagination, isn't it so? If you suffer the greatest faculties that you have, what can we do with you? If you suffer an ailment, understandable. If you suffer a disability, understandable. If you suffer your ability, hopeless case. Yes or no? You're suffering your capabilities. If you're suffering your disability, it's all right. You're suffering your capabilities. I must tell you this, about 4-5 months ago, I think, you might have seen it on the news, a young lady, 34-year-old lady, who was a television anchor in Hyderabad, jumped off the 5th floor window, killed herself, left a note, "Nobody is responsible for my death, my brain is my enemy." How many million years it took to get this brain to this size, and now it becomes your enemy? She articulated this, but this is true with almost 90% of the human beings. They are suffering their own intelligence, isn't it? If you take away half their brain, they will be peaceful. Yes. And that is why a whole bunch of idiots are going about saying that the ultimate goal of life is peace of mind. Such people will only rest in peace.
But when you realize that all your name, your form and everything you see is provisional, two things happen. To some people, they have immediate, what we could only metaphorically call the dark night of the soul. They go into a deep depression because everything they thought was real is no longer real, including their own name, form, body and mind. Some people get so scared that they have a bad trip. Some people cross that threshold and discover nirvana or enlightenment. And they say, wow, I thought I was squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, but I'm a timeless being that can morph myself into any experience, including the human experience, which is amazing, But the human experience is also that which causes existential depression. So the causes of human suffering, since you brought it up, are brought up in Eastern wisdom traditions as number one, you suffer because you don't know who you are. You confuse yourself with your body-mind experience. Number two, you grasp and cling at experiences which are evanescent and transitory and dreamlike. You say, what happened to your childhood? It's over. What happened to yesterday? It's over. What happened to 5 minutes ago? It's over. What happens to these words? By the time you hear them, they don't exist. So, Wittgenstein, the German philosopher, said, we are asleep. Our life is a dream, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So what do you wake up to? When you cross this threshold, you wake up to your true self, which is not body or mind, but the awareness in which that experience is happening. So grasping and clinging at a dream is the second cause of human suffering. The third is being afraid of anything that's unpleasant, pain, abandonment, being treated by someone not respectfully. So that's, there's aversion to certain experiences. Third cause of suffering. Fourth is identifying, which is related to with your ego identity. And fifth is the fear of death. Now they're all connected. They're all the same fear. And they are not knowing who you are. This is the biggest question that humans or everybody should be asking. Who am I? What am I? Am I the changing experience of this body, which is a perceptual activity? Am I the experience of the changing mind or the changing personality? Because you don't have the same personality when you were a kid or maybe even 10 years ago. What is it at the basis of this? When you start that reflective self-inquiry, ask yourself, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? Go into the stillness of meditation, you have what wisdom traditions have called revelation, revealed truth. Now, that sounds very grand. I would say just call it insight. Meditation, mindfulness, awareness of body, awareness of mind, awareness of mental space, awareness of the web of relationship, awareness with that which we call the universe. It leads you ultimately to the awareness of awareness. And when you discover that, that's nirvana.
you.